the upshot of all this is that I think that Bitcoin Cash is going to be the global reserve currency one day, right? Bitcoin has always grown exponentially from its beginnings way back when, and I don't see any reason that it's going to stop. Pretty much, it just defies the haters every single time.
You're going to love this. Trust me. What you're seeing now is my normal state. This is a Super Saiyan. And this is what is known as a Super Saiyan that has ascended past a Super Saiyan. Or you could just call this a Super Saiyan 2.
What a useless transformation. You've changed your hair, so what?
Just wait.
Has he really found a way to surpass an Ascended Saiyan? Is that possible?
He must be bluffing. I mean, what would that make him? Double Ascended?
And this is to go even further beyond.
It's unreal. How is he generating that much power?
There will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, Banks.
Increasing the block size to 32 megabytes right now. What would be the top 5 arguments that would get hurled against me?
That's a good one.
There are a few that the big blockers got right.
Ching, like all these coins splash into the wallets of all the winners. I love that.
There's a new threat out there. It's crypto.
We're live.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. This is episode number 118, Fiat Food and BCH Conversion, featuring Steve Thurmond. Today is Sunday, the 9th of June, 2024, and our guest rocking the Celine shirt, which I absolutely love to see, and which I assume he acquired at BCH Bliss, which was where I met him, is a BTC to BCH convert. I'm hoping we're going to hear more about that, and also works on his own financial stuff through his company Forward Financial. Welcome to the show, Steve. How did you get into Bitcoin?
Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure and honor to be part of your podcast here. My journey to Bitcoin Cash. Nice screenshot there of my face. That's a nice, it's a nice look.
I did the best I could from the interview that we had. I was like trying to press play on YouTube to freeze it at the exact right frame, you know.
It's quite all right. It's not the least flattering pic online of me, I assure you. So it's fine. My journey to crypto and ultimately Bitcoin Cash, I can't say it was different than a lot, but it was a very winding path. It really goes back to me in my early and mid 20s, trying to be more proactive in the political process, trying to learn a little bit more about politics, voting, my options, etc. And going down that rabbit hole for a few years in my 20s. I kind of landed in that journey on agreeing mostly with the libertarian philosophy. I voted libertarian the last 4 elections. I don't believe I will be this election. We won't get into those nuances there. But I mean, at the end of the day, voting in general, as the saying goes, if it did anything, they'd outlaw it tomorrow. So I'm really jaded and bitter in that regard. But my journey into learning more about politics and the political process, inevitably, like so many people, led me into inquiry into economics and learning more about economics, how economics works on a national level, and then learning first principles about money, which is imperative. I can't speak for other countries, but in this country, one of the biggest disservices our educational system does is crank out worker drones that have very little to no clue about first principles of money and how it works. And this is very evident in the systems and models that you see here in America. And so learning more about economics and first principles of money, reading things like Hayek, Bastiat, Murray Rothbard. I was a delegate for for Ron Paul for 2008 and 2012 as a delegate for him in Tennessee. Both of those runs that he had no delusions of grandeur that he would actually get the presidency, but his whole Ron Paul revolution really awakened a lot of people up to money, finance, fiat currency, the hegemony, manipulation, and predatory nature of fiat currency, specifically the U.S. dollar. And yeah, it was a winding path. I cannot remember exactly where I was introduced to Bitcoin specifically. I want to say back in that time, I was listening to a lot of Stefan Molyneux. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Free Domain podcast.
Yes, very. Yes.
Yeah, resonated a lot with the anarchy kind of message that he is. I've not listened to him in a long time, so I don't even know where he stands anymore. But I want to say that he was probably the first person that was talking about Bitcoin back in that day. I know a lot of people found it through Freecast Live and some of these other alternative and smaller underground radio shows, if you will. But I want to say Stefan Molyneux was the first person that mentioned Bitcoin to me, and that would have probably been around 2011. I was within a few years of the Genesis block, and I said, "Well, this is it." I was like, everything that I agree with and resonate with is right here. This is hard as fuck money that can't be manipulated and messed with, and it strikes directly at the root of the issues we have in this country and worldwide with fiat currency. This is it. And like so many people during that time that actually procured Bitcoin, I remember, I think Armory and Bisq were one of the first 2 wallets that I installed on my PC. I didn't mine any on my PC, and I, of course, like everybody, kicks themselves in the rear for not doing so back then. But I set up wallets, and I was kind of watching it, and I procured some Bitcoin. And there wasn't much, wink, wink, to spend it on at that time, but I did spend it, wink, wink, on things. So again, kicking myself, hindsight's always 20/20, but had Bitcoin early on, spent quite a bit of it, got it, spent it. Again, this is in my 20s, so run with that info as you will. But there just wasn't really a lot of places to spend it. But then it started to gain traction and adoption, and you started seeing these bigger players talking about it, and it starts to make ripples and waves in the media. And you've got things like Newegg and Overstock and these bigger organizations accepting it as payment, which was really, really cool at that time. I heard about the block size wars 2015, 2016-ish, didn't pay much attention to it. A lot happened in my life personally during those few years of the block size war. We moved cities. My wife got pregnant for the first time. We had our first child at 2017, right there as the block size war was peaking. And so I was very distracted by that. Again, also right there around 2017, Ethereum was going off and it was going bonkers. And then I got distracted by the shinies, like so many people did with these ICOs and the rise of the meme coins and the shit coins and what have you, and a lot of distraction there that happened right as the block size war was peaking and the fork was happening. And so I really didn't pay much attention to it. And then I saw this new shiny with Ethereum that, wow, this is a really cool protocol and smart contracts and all these different things you can do with it. And the crypto space community just really blew up at that time, including with the good and the bad. You know, the rise of the crypto bros, you know, happened at that same time as well, with all of the good and terrible information that came out of it. But I got distracted by Ethereum. Realized again, there's that site. I think it's fees. Fees.wtf, where you can see how much you've spent in gas. And I think I haven't checked that in a few years, but the last time I checked that, it was like 10 grand I spent in gas fees, you know, in a very short order. And I was like, well, this is bullshit. This cannot be sustainable. And I was paying it like everybody else, because during that boom, we were all making money on these ridiculous meme coins that had very little utility or use case. And it was just pure speculation, but it was fun and it was exciting and it was very distracting from the real narrative, unfortunately. So then going down the F space, the Ethereum rabbit hole, found L2s and really latched on to Matic at the time. This is before Matic was turned into Polygon. Really latched on to Matic. There was a lot of crazy arbitrage plays, positive arbitrage plays. I remember one specifically that was Aave and Matic that was literally printing money. This was like 6 months. You could borrow ridiculous amounts of Aave and create liquidity pools and pair it with Matic, and it was just printing money. It was bananas. I was like, this also cannot last, I know, but milked out as long as I could. And then yield farming got sidetracked by another rabbit hole, yield farming. And I learned early on, I think you and I discussed this at Bliss, I learned pretty quickly that with these low volume yield farms, it didn't take a lot of money, $1,000, $2,000, to drive the price up right out of the gate as soon as they launched, wait for everybody to FOMO, and then dump. And you could just make a killing on these yield farms on Polygon and Matic. And so I did that for quite a while, and then also very quickly realized that I might have been the whale at the beginning, but there's always a bigger whale ready to dump on you, and that's what happened. And then it all kind of came to a head. What was it, 2020, 2021, when the market just tanked all over. And I was leveraged, I was spread thin, I was in multiple of these shitcoin speculation schemes, and it all just came down, and I lost a lot of money during that time, unfortunately. But I learned very, very good lessons. It taught me a lot. I learned a lot about the ecosystem. Realized what I didn't want to do, and inevitably turned my focus back to BTC. Now, this is post block size war, which I didn't pay attention to, unfortunately, but turned my focus back to BTC. Getting burned by ETH and losing so much money turned me back into a Bitcoin maxi, and I was full Bitcoin maxi, laser eyes and all, parroting the narrative, singing all of the tunes that everybody sings out there, while kicking myself now, while not doing my own due diligence and really understanding what was going on, and again being virtually oblivious of the block size war. So back to full circle, back to BTC as a maxi. I was introduced to the general, John Neary, of General
Emergent
Protocols,
Reasons.
Emergent Reasons. I was introduced to him. One of my good buddies from Nashville was his roommate in college in Vanderbilt, where they went to college. And they were literally 1 and 2, top 2 in their class, valedictorian and whatever. They were the 2 top people in their graduating class. So this is some top tier people he was associated with. And I would always talk to my friend, I won't mention his name, but I always talk to him about Bitcoin. He's big in traditional finance, absolutely kills it in the traditional finance space. He's very good with numbers. He creates these algorithms. He trades options, futures, all of the stuff in the TradFi space, and makes a grip of money doing it. And I was always saying Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. He's like, you need to talk to my buddy John. You need to talk to my buddy John. He's in Bitcoin Cash. And again, parroting the narrative, that failed fork that I heard about. The market has already spoken, saying all of the things that people say. He's like, no, man, you need to talk to John. He's like, John is the smartest person I know. You need to talk to John. If he's in Bitcoin Cash, it's for a reason. And John was gracious enough we started texting back and forth in Telegram, and he was gracious enough to spend well over an hour with me on the phone. But the first thing he did was sent me the Who Killed Bitcoin documentary. I'm like, John, this is in Spanish. What's this going to do for me? I don't speak Spanish. And he's like, no, this one. And there was Jeremy, the voice of God, there with his booming baritone. I'm like, okay, all right. This is really, really good. And this documentary is well done, and this makes sense. And then I went back to John, and we had multiple conversations back and forth. But it was really eye-opening. I kind of compare the Who Killed Bitcoin documentary to the first time I remember watching Zeitgeist, if you remember that back in the day, which was just, for me, really eye-opening and mind-blowing. I was like, holy shit, I'm living a lie. I've been lied to. What is going on here? What is happening in the space? But having known the avenue of fiat currency, the creature from Jekyll Island that was created in 1913, knowing the background of fiat, I was like, well, this is not surprising at all. If there is a way to loot, they are going to loot. The powers that be, whoever you want to call them, the people that pull the purse strings, hold the purse strings, and make the decisions regarding the flow of money, they see this. They're not idiots. They see this as a direct threat. And again, I kind of flipped back to Molyneux. I remember early on him talking about the little pieces of sand, throwing it into the machine to keep it from moving forward, bring it to a grinding halt eventually. And that makes a lot of sense to me and resonated with me. But yeah, so long story short, back and forth with John quite a bit, watching the documentary. And then what sealed the deal was actually using Bitcoin Cash. He's like, here, let me send you some Bitcoin Cash. Boom, instantly in my wallet, instantly. I was like, whoa, the last Bitcoin transaction I did took like 15 hours, and I was crossing my fingers and hoping it would show up in my wallet eventually on some centralized exchange. This is exactly how peer-to-peer cash was supposed to work. And then I read the white paper, 15 years later, I actually read the white paper. I say, well, it's right there. I mean, this is really clear and concise, and a 9-page white paper. If you haven't read it out there, spend the time reading it. Even if you don't fully grasp it, it's written in layman enough terms that you can wrap your head around it, and then go down the different rabbit holes to learn about the nuances there on the tech side. But yeah, it was really that experience of receiving Bitcoin Cash that sealed it for me. And then I said, well, then I've got to prove this to myself. I've got to actually spend this on something that benefits me or my family's life in one way or another. I needed to spend it on food. Let's just start with food. We all need to eat. Let's spend it on food. And so I started looking around in my area. I'm in southern Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee. saw nothing but ATMs on the Bitcoin Cash map. I'm like, well, I don't need an ATM. I need food. And then I saw a few different retailers that use Menufy, which I don't even know if they're even up anymore. But in my area, even those merchants, I think a few restaurants, they went out of business. They don't even exist anymore, fiat or Bitcoin Cash otherwise. So long story short, BCH Bliss was coming around. So this is all over the progression of about a year. And I heard your I'm sure I heard it through you. Started listening to all of your stuff, went to episode 85, listened to that multiple times. The FAQ list on your website it's awesome. It is awesome. Really, really helpful because I'm like, I have this question. Let me look. Oh, well, there it is right there on the FAQ. Jeremy's answered it. And so just being able to read through that was really helpful and beneficial in my evolution, if you will. So long story short, traded the orange laser eyes for these guys right here.
Oh, let's go, baby. Woo! Sunglasses, you love to see it.
That's right. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Going to Bliss and actually experiencing that. My goal with going to Bliss was I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it on nothing but Bitcoin Cash. I want to see if this can be done, first of all. 2 weeks before Bliss, the Bliss conference, I watched the George Gammon clip on YouTube of him trying to do the same thing in St. Martin and St. Kitts, and I was like, oh, this is not very promising. This is scary now. So, but you know, in looking at that video objectively and critically, there was a lot of user error there, in my opinion, that could have been easily avoided, if you will. I will say the maps are outdated, and I did even experience that in Ljubljana. There really needs to be a good active, not static, but active map and retail location, which I don't know how that would work, but yeah, I bought all of my airfare, Travala, bought my, first bought my NFT using Zapit, integrated, connected really quick through Wallet Connect on Zapit, got the NFT, got one for my buddy as well, my friend Carl, McClarty Films that did the highlight reel that I'll hopefully be able to go live with here soon. Got all of his stuff as well on BCH through Travala. Lined up the transportation from the airport to the hotel. Of course, paid the hotel in BCH. Did the taxi service there out of Ljubljana. We had at least 2 dinners in town using Bitcoin Cash. We did go to BTC City, which I know doesn't stand for Bitcoin, but it was pretty neat having that in the background just to clown on it. They were there in BTC City because I had heard through Ray's channel that they used a lot of accepted Bitcoin Cash and a lot of merchants there, and we struck out. Maybe we just didn't go to the right places, but in BTC City itself, which what does it stand for? Bratislava Town Center or something like that. I don't even know what it stands for, but I know it doesn't stand for Bitcoin. Just coincidental, or does it? I don't know.
It's Bratislavka Centro, I think, is.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, but yeah, we struck out there trying to use it, but downtown or along the river there, which is a much neater area anyway, we had quite a bit of success there. But yeah, you know, at this point, I'm all in, proselytizing wherever I can. Onboarded 3 personal friends yesterday at a birthday get together. And one of my friends is she's a hairstylist. She does hair, and she's like, the girls and I, we want at her salon. It's like we all prefer cash. She's like, this is perfect. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to go and talk to about 6 or 7 hairstylists and onboard them locally, and you know, hopefully they'll start accepting it as well. So, you know, at this point, I'm an enthusiast. Proselytizer, if you will, just doing what I can to get the word out. And I do want to venture into the merchant onboarding scenario. I know Ryan Giffen, is it Griffin or Giffen? there in
Giffen.
Florida. Ryan Giffen, I know he's done a lot down there, and we met at Bliss and exchanged contact info, what have you. And I'm going to try to maybe pick his brain a little bit in that regard. Yeah. Your turn, Jeremy. Feel free to ask whatever you'd like.
Well,
I've blathered on for 20 minutes now.
No, that is such a great story, and I love how on this show, obviously, every single time everybody has a Bitcoin story, right? And we've heard 100 or more probably at this point, and everyone it's a bit different, right? Everyone, they're coming from a different place, they're at a different point in their life, and it just really goes to show how this kind of emergent phenomenon is happening, in everybody's different point of view, but at the end of the day, it's all the same thing. It's all objectively, the same blockchain. So I really like that. One thing I thought that it was great that you mentioned and that really impressed me when we met at Bliss was that you said to me basically straight up, like, yeah, I was one of the laser eyes and I regurgitated all this nonsense and blah, blah, blah. But now I've got over it and I realized I was wrong. And that you just said that like straight out, I found really impressive. Because you don't see that very much, right? Most people are not willing to, they'll just, even if they had been through that, maybe they would sweep it under the rug, or they would minimize it, or they would not mention it or something. But you just were like straight up like, yeah, well, that was the mistakes I made, but I learned some lessons and now I'm here. And I loved that. I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
It's very tribal. Like most things, these things become really tribal, almost cultish religion to so many people, and it's hard having been raised in a religious environment, which we can touch on as well when we're talking about fiat food. But you see that in so many different aspects, and it's really hard to deprogram and take off the glasses, if you will, and look at things objectively. It's really hard to do that, but I think that's where growth and change happens. You have to be able to do that if you're going to be honest with yourself and with others. And so that's how I try to approach everything in life, not being so militant and adhered to a certain dogma or ethos, and not being willing to change. The moment you say something, you're closing the door to the possibilities of anything else. And so I don't claim to know much of anything. I'm in a process of constantly learning and evolving and trying to change my view with new information at hand. And that's, I think, the best we can do.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like you say, yeah, you only can learn by unlearning, really, is one of the main things in life, right? It's all assumptions in our mind that we have to get past, and they're different for everyone. The things, your background, what you're taught, or what you've experienced, or it's really different for everyone. Another thing I liked about your story, which I didn't know beforehand, was you talked about watching Who Killed Bitcoin and then listening to episode 85 and then watching the FAQs. Like, that's exactly what I've been doing. That's what I'm aiming for with all this stuff that we've created now.
Bravo to you, man. I mean, you do so much for the community as far as resources and information that, honestly, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have been at Bliss were it not for you and Jet. So kudos to both of you.
No, thank you. It's great. And I am still working away on those FAQs. One of the key points to it, I think, is the fact that all the articles sort of are interlinked, because I was thinking through that problem. It's a very hard problem, like you said, when people, especially if they've learnt one sort of side of the issue, is then they come in and they have one question about it, like what about this or what about that, but it's usually all sort of interrelated. To have the paradigm shift, especially from BTC to BCH, you kind of need to see how everything's connected. Like, why won't the BCH community rebrand? Well, it's because of the history. And why is the history? Well, it was because of the sabotage. And why was it sabotage? Because of the fundamentals of money. And why does that play into how many nodes you can have? And why does it, and it, like, it all, a lot of it, any one point is not going to be convincing. You have to see how it all ties together.
You got to follow the breadcrumbs. You got to follow the breadcrumbs back to the source at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, so I thought that was all really, really cool. And that was a great story about how. Do you want to touch on any of the other financial stuff that you've done, like outside of crypto? Does that play into your point of view at all, or?
Yeah, as I said, I work in, well, I may not have mentioned, I know you and I have talked before. I work in traditional finance. Forward Financial is my company. And at the end of the day, I primarily do insurance and retirement planning. I work heavily with seniors, lots of seniors. I can help people from birth to death at the end of the day, but my book of business, if you will, is primarily made up of seniors. I work heavily in the Medicare space, which is in the U.S. is our health safety net, if you will, for seniors 65 plus. And that's kind of how I built my business on Medicare products and in the Medicare space. But I've expanded through the years into income, retirement planning, long-term care. This all falls under the financial umbrella. The financial umbrella is huge, and there's a multitude of products, solutions for people at different stages of life. And I try to. I'm a certified financial fiduciary, which means that it's essentially the Hippocratic oath, if you will, of doctors. It's the same thing for finance, which is essentially putting my clients' needs first above all, which I've always had that philosophy. My father had a lot of shortcomings, but he taught me a lot of good things as well, and that was certainly one of them. But yeah, you put your clients first, and then the money follows. Really, at the end of the day, as long as you're taking care of your clients, their wants, needs, answering their questions, the money is a byproduct of that. And so, really, it is a service to people, helping them navigate really confusing topics and products. Again, going back to our dismal educational system here that cranks out financially illiterate individuals. Which is awful, but has been a boon for my business because of that. So I get to pick up that mantle, if you will, along with many others. The insurance space is a delicate thing. In this country, a lot of insurance agents get lumped in with car salesmen. And so it's really hard to kind of shake that stigma and take a different fiduciary approach in that regard. Which I do my best. But you're also dealing with Medicare, which is kind of a niche product. That's the bulk of the health insurance side of things that I do. And it's kind of cut and dry because it's a federal product. It's an entitlement program, and you're dealing with Uncle Sam and the CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and all the rules, regulations, and bullshit that comes with that as well. You're constantly navigating, and they're constantly flipping the script on you. Literally every year, aspects of this space change, and so you're always on your toes, kind of with excitement and with terror as what's going to happen in the upcoming year. And it changes. It can vary by election years. They're always trying to buy people's votes one way or the other. So a lot of things will happen during an election year, which this year is. And then you're dealing with bureaucracy at the end of the day, which are the most inefficient group of individuals on the planet, no matter where you are. Central planning and bureaucrats are the worst. They're by and large clueless unless they have direct contact with those that are actually being impacted by their legislation, and so many of them don't. It's just top down, and you'll get what comes, whether you like it or not. And then they realize the mistakes they've made, and then they'll backpedal and change things. It's constantly a mess having to navigate products that are tied to centrally planned government entitlement programs like Medicare. But I can't, deny it's been good to me and my family, and I'm grateful for it in that regard. But I do try to integrate first principles of money into my conversations with my clients on an ongoing basis. And those that inquire, and a lot of them are, you'd be surprised. This community that we're a part of is primarily a younger demographic, but you would be very surprised how many boomers out there are really hungry for this type of information, and they absolutely see the world in a different way. A lot of these people either lived through the Depression, or they definitely had parents that did and were influenced by that. And so they know the downside of what happens when money goes off the rails. And so they're very aware of where they stand financially. And at this point in their lives, being boomers, 65 plus, they're in the distribution phase of that nest egg that they've acquired through their working life. And they have to protect it. They know they have to protect it, and they're being bombarded each and every day by the media of the nonsense that's happening economically in the world, and especially this country. So they're receptive to it, and they're gun shy because of the life experiences they've had up to this point in their life. So I don't know if we lost Jeremy or not there, Jet, but
it looks like we have.
Okay,
I'll be back
keep blathering
shortly.
here.
Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, it's I try to integrate the crypto conversation, and really 30,000 foot view. I don't just jump in talking about Bitcoin Cash. We back?
Yes.
We're
Sorry,
back.
I don't know what's on my internet these days.
I don't know if you could hear me or not, Jeremy, but could you hear me when you went out?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I do try to integrate the crypto conversation if I see an opportunity, but more and more clients are asking me about it. You know, the older generation, they're very, the first thing they'll usually ask is about precious metals, gold and silver. Because again, these people are watching Fox News, they're getting bombarded with gold and silver ads on a daily basis, and they're just regurgitating what they see or what they hear in their circle of friends. But I guess the one upshot of BTC being so mainstream now is that it's on. It's part of the conversation now with all demographics and all ages, and it gives us the opportunity to broach that topic with them, and then steer the conversation to a digital peer-to-peer electronic cash that actually works. And I have onboarded multiple seniors. With the different tech out there. I love the Selene wallet, obviously. I use it. It is my wallet of preference, but the shareable link in the Bitcoin.com wallet is super, super powerful. And when you're onboarding a noob, it really is, I think, one of the best things out there to just expose them to the concept. So.
Yeah, along with maps, like you said, that's kind of high up on the Selene roadmap. Some kind of actively maintained map would be killer, and then the shareable wallet, like you say. I mean, for me, I also really never count anybody out, honestly, in terms of onboarding them to Bitcoin. I'll talk to anybody about it, but with seniors and older people, you know, I always as well have that same impression, and the reason is because on my mum's side of my family, I have a very big family, like loads of cousins and, you know, in-laws and all this sort of stuff, aunts and uncles and all that. But in that whole group of them, and if any of them are listening right now, they can laugh at this, is I was telling them, you know, in 2013, 2014, 2015, I'm telling them all about Bitcoin. I'm obsessed with it. And only, you know, out of the whole lot, two of them were kind of gave it a chance and got it. One was my uncle, who's a very sort of entrepreneurial business focused guy, and so he was able to click with it a little bit, I think, or at least he knew that I was kind of onto something, like he'd seen those patterns before. And the other was my grandfather, who at the time was 100 years old, and he was the fastest person to get it of anybody. I told him, I said, look, I'm into this thing Bitcoin. He said, what's that? And I said, it's an online peer-to-peer currency. And he said, I fucking love it. Well, he didn't say it in those words, but he did. I was like, can I send you some? He was like, yep. He got his iPad out. I sent him some Bitcoin, and that was it. And he said, you know, Jeremy, I've got some gold coins in the back room there that I've had like since before the war, since before World War II. Wow. And they're worth a ton because it's like solid money, you know. So he just got it instantly. I've never seen anybody get it as fast as that. And so I'll have that same experience as you. I think that maybe there's a bit of a missing middle, you know. Maybe there's a point at which they hadn't had that exposure either directly or through their parents to that kind of crisis mode. But if you go far back enough, people remember stuff like that, right? It's really really big
absolutely deal. And they're hungry for solutions. These people are keenly aware that the possibility of outliving their money, their nest egg, is a very real thing. They're keenly aware. And with the state of the world, the debasement of our currency and inflation going off the rails, their money is going, it's not going near as far in their basic necessities. I work with all clients across the board, multimillionaires to people at federal poverty level. And so I hear all sides of the argument here. But at the end of the day, they're all very keenly aware of what's happening financially in this country, and especially, which we can get into when we're talking about Fiat food, when they go to the grocery store. I've got clients that have to sometimes choose between feeding themselves, feeding their pet, or getting their medications. These are people at or really close to federal poverty level, and rent's going up for a lot of them if they don't own a home. Some are taking out second mortgages or doing a reverse mortgage, not able to pass along that massive asset to their children, their heirs. They're having to give it back to a bank just so they can live and stay locked in that fiat nonsense system. But the point is they're hungry for this. I think people of all generations are. There's a quote, and I forget exactly how it goes, and I forget where I heard it. I want to say I may have heard it from Robert Breedlove. He's one laser-eyed maxi that I still listen to from time to time.
He's in some trouble right now. I don't know if you followed that. But
I don't.
He's in a bit of hot water because he was very traditional Bitcoin values or whatever passes for it at this time, but he. And I don't claim to be an expert, so everyone can look into this independently, do your own research. But he sort of like left the mother of his child to get around a girl who posts a lot of OnlyFans content after being all porn is bad and all that sort of stuff. He's ditched his kid and his girl to get with this OnlyFans girl, and then she today, I believe, actually made like a revenge porn site exposing photos of the ex-wife, and it's turned into a disaster with him.
God.
But,
wow. Well, as the saying goes, power corrupts.
Absolute power corrupts,
nothing,
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, if nothing else, kind of a caveat to that quip that we all know. If nothing else, power reveals. And I can't say that I mean, obviously what he did is reprehensible, and I'll try not to use any ad hom attacks and just repeat the message that I, and again, I don't even know if it was him. I want to say it was something that I saw him post years ago. This is a while back, basically talking about money being a human rights issue. Money is essentially a representation of our time and energy. And anything that attacks that, the sovereign individual and the ability to protect and preserve that, is a direct attack on that individual. So really, it is a human rights issue at the end of the day. And I firmly believe that we need a new amendment, just like we had separation of church and state. We absolutely need another amendment to our Constitution for separation of state and money at the end of the day. So sorry to hear that about Breedlove. I used to tune into the What is Money podcast. A lot of good first principles there. So I wish I hadn't heard what you just said, but
well, you can follow it up. He has his own point of view about it and everything like that. But he's definitely seems to be taking it, going down in flames a bit on social media.
That's unfortunate, especially if you're picking an OnlyFans over your wife and family. That's degen level. That's meme coin shit.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those cases where sometimes somebody it's like a bit of karmic thing. The person who is most egregious of this kind of stuff is usually the people like we're talking before about religious backgrounds or even different things that people might have repressed or whatever, that then it comes full circle. The universe has a way of teaching some harsh lessons like that.
Isn't that the truth? I don't believe in karma, but damn if it doesn't happen often.
All right, so we got to check in on the markets just quickly. We've been up a little bit and then down. US dollars 472 and 35 cents to buy 100 megasats of BCH, which is up slightly. We're doing good on that ratio. One BTC sat buys 147.7 BCH sats, which is flat, and one ETH buys 783 megasats. So BCH is up slightly there. I just wanted to make a quick point of this BCH cloak of invisibility, as I have dubbed it, which is I saw Blocktoshi was posting on Twitter, or Blockatoshi, about why is nobody talking about the fact that BCH is one of the best performing crypto assets in 2024, with a crying laughing face and then a list of all of them. And BCH is, I think, number 10, but that might be across the whole crypto markets, 20,000 coins or whatever, right? So it's a pretty substantial year to date after BNB and NIA, and ahead of Doge, Maker, Solana, Wrap Bitcoin, and BTC. So we're really just doing pretty well there, and maybe slowly, but not quite, but slowly the market is starting to listen. The market has spoken yet again, as you might say. What do you make of the markets?
I do watch them, and I read down through that thread. The amount of cognitive dissonance in that thread is pretty pretty revealing. Just the excuses and the things that people say in there. I think I replied to a couple of people in that thread, but it's going to be volatile. Any kind of anything in this space is going to be volatile for a while until we reach a Bitcoin Cash standard, and its world reserve currency. As long as it's tied to fiat, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to be flat. It's going to move. It's going to be volatile as long as it's tied to fiat. It just boggles my mind how people. It's really disheartening to talk to somebody that's jazzed about the price of BTC while completely ignoring the utility of it and what its true intended purpose is. And that's all they talk about is number go up. And I was there, I've been there myself, but it's so much more exciting to me to look at it from its utility aspect as a medium of exchange. The store of value will come with the utility at the end of the day, and it's just disheartening to see people. But I don't fault them. We're human beings. Most everybody is greedy at some level or another, and we're still stuck in this fiat world for the time being that we have to navigate best we can. So, and it's hard to fault people like that, but the best we can do is nudge them into a better narrative and expose the misinformation and the lies and the bastardization of the original narrative of this technology. So, yeah, I watch the markets loosely. I still dabble in the traditional finance world as well, not as much. John and I's mutual friend that I mentioned, I kind of default to him. The guy just kills it. I mean, he lives in his boxers on the couch, and just stupid money. Yeah, he does. And that good for him. I've played in that world. I've lost countless hours playing in that world with very little to show for it. I don't have his level of savant, I guess, to navigate that well. So I much rather, from an investment perspective, would much rather take a dollar cost average and hold approach. But trumping that, I would much rather use BCH for its intended purpose and utility, and that's spending and replacing at this point.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Bliss. I know you did already explain a little bit about it, but I got to mention the day 2 talks are now on the YouTube channel, except for Fiendish's. That's coming, and I also put all the talks up on the RSS feed. I originally thought, I've referred to it. People can look it up on YouTube if they want, but I thought, no, look, a lot of the listeners, I'm sure they probably just won't get around to that or whatever if they're used to listening on the audio. So we'll just put them all out there, and got loads of downloads there. So I'm sure people are listening to that, and it's all really good stuff that I'm glad to get the word out. So things have been a little bit quiet since Bliss, and everybody's maybe recuperating a little bit, although I think things are starting to ramp back up. But before we get too far away from the event, is there any other thoughts you had on coming along? Like, was there anything that surprised you, or did you have a favorite talk, or favorite person that you met, or something like that?
So there's that saying in poker, if you don't know who the mark is, it's you.
Yes, the fish. They usually say the fish. That's
yeah,
the
exactly.
poker term.
Yeah, at Bliss, I came up with this saying: if you don't know who the dumbest person in the room is, it's definitely you. And that's how I felt. There's a lot of brain power in that room, and it was really neat to be around people that are working under the hood on this. It was really a different perspective. I call you you're the Lorax. You speak for the geeks, Jeremy, because sometimes it's really hard to have a conversation with some of these devs that are just on another level intellectually and everything. And I think a lot of them have a hard time of communicating as well because of that. They do what they do. They're writing code and they're making things happen, and they're absolutely crucial and essential to this technology, but sometimes they don't always convey what they're doing in a clear way. And so again, you're the Lorax to me. You speak for the geeks. So you're a happy medium there of being able to translate to the layman what's going on. But yeah, it was really neat. I enjoyed all of the speakers very much, and being able to connect with them as well, trying out some of the different stuff. The Cauldron guys were fantastic, actually helping me buy some socks and a few other of their coins there. But yeah, it was just overall a really positive experience. The chicken feed, I forget. Coin Grace. That was really fascinating. I have personal friends that run influencers, if you will, that run their own farms in the area here and are constantly putting out content that I went to broach that tech with them about, because I think it could benefit them as well. And just really neat concept what CoinGrace is doing. But yeah, all in all, the conference was fantastic. Beautiful location. Ljubljana itself is gorgeous. 4 Point Sheraton, amazing. The food was fantastic. Hospitality and staff were all really great. So it'd been quite a few years since I traveled internationally, and with the world has changed drastically in the last decade, and especially the last 5 since COVID. So I didn't really know what to expect. There was a time where I looked forward to air travel. God, it's awful now. It is horrific. They just treat you like cattle, and I get it. I get it, but the level of, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this, just the level of customer service in most places since COVID. I don't know if it's a generational thing or what. Customer service has gone off the cliff, especially here in the States. We notice it most when we're going out to eat. And again, you're getting served by an 18, 19-year-old, and it might be a generational thing, but it just seems like nobody gives a shit anymore on a customer service level, and they're just doing the bare minimum. And again, I think you could tie this all back to the fact that they're probably getting underpaid for a job that's not meeting their needs, and it certainly isn't fulfilling them in many other aspects. And at the end of the day, fiat currency is the root of all evil, in my opinion, because it so drastically negatively impacts so many aspects of our lives on an ongoing basis. And you're constantly getting rug pulled as they debase the currency. So it's like, what do you do? I understand the defeatist mentality that so many people have, especially this younger generation, that thinks they can never own a home, thinks they'll never have a high-paying job that can meet their needs, thinks that they'll never be able to start a family because they can barely afford to keep themselves alive. It's a massive issue that there's no silver bullet solution, but the one thing that could be most impactful is giving people sound currency and money that doesn't deplete their buying power. And that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. So long-winded answer there. Bliss was amazing. The history, holy crap. more castles in Slovenia than any other country in Europe. Pretty awesome there. I was kind of jealous of Ray. He made it up to Lake Bled there. Really wanted to check that out. It was such a short trip. I was only there 3 days, and I think some were even less than that. So, but I do plan on going back. You know what I remember about you? I've been to Europe before. It's been about a decade ago. But the neat thing about Europe is, you know, in the States, we got 48 states here in the lower 48, and you can drive to all of them. But they're all going to speak English in all those states. There's going to be a little bit of nuance state to state as far as culture and slang. And I'm in the South here, and I can turn on my Southern accent if I have to. But point is it's pretty cohesive. There, you drive 2 hours, you're in a different language, a different culture, different history, and then all of the splitting and dividing that's happened in Europe for centuries. It's really, really neat. And I was like, we're 2 hours to Venice. We're an hour from Zagreb. We're just south of Austria. What is? It's. I forget how small, I guess, that area of the world is, and how quickly you can be in another reality, so to speak, just by taking a quick train ride or a drive. But yeah, very, very enjoyable. Hope to bring the family back at some point. And then yeah, just being around you guys there was a lot of fun and a learning experience for sure. Would love to make Argentina. It happens, I believe, the 13th and 14th of October, which is the day before my busy part of my year starts. Last quarter of the year is bananas for me. I pull 14, 16-hour days for about 8 weeks straight, and then I'm exhausted by the time Christmas gets here. So won't be able to make Argentina, but I do look forward to whether Bliss is back in Ljubljana, or are you staying with the theme, or have you talked to Silverblood? What's the consensus here?
Yeah, I can't say too much about that. I think
all right, under wraps.
A little bit under wraps, but I'll say things are progressing. Let's put it that way. So
good.
Yeah, I'm feeling good about that, and I do want to also, give a shout out to the BCH Argentina guys. They've announced their conference is going to be on the 12th to the 14th of October this year. We will do an episode more focusing on that at some point. I was thinking it's been a long time. Marcelo was on now more than 101 episodes ago, so might be time to get him back in the hot seat to give us an update on how he's seeing the world. If you haven't seen that, by the way, any of my listeners, episode 17 with Marcelo, we talked about the whole history of Bitcoin, and it was one of the earliest episodes, but also one of the best, most received ones ever, I think. So yeah, maybe have a look at that, episode 17, but might get him back on for a bit of an update. But I'm very glad to see that BCH conferences are starting to pop up, and maybe in 2025, we had 2 this year, maybe even do a little bit better next year. So that really is a sign to me that the scene is growing, is once it starts to manifest itself organically and physically like that, because it's such a big thing to put on. And when you can have it in several areas of the world, it means almost everyone can have a chance to get to one or the other if they really want to go, right? So I think that's really important for the community to have.
And I've always wanted to visit Buenos Aires, so I'm jealous of you guys that will be there. I hope you thoroughly enjoy it. Sounds like they do have quite a bit of activity down there as far as merchant adoption and getting the word out, which is exciting, really exciting. So
yeah, they told me that they're planning to have, I think, minimum like 250 people and up to 400, and wow. I was thinking, wow, like Bliss was about 50, right? And even that was a lot. In 50 people is not like a mind-blowing amount of people in general, but having that 50 people in that room, there was a lot going on. So I can't even imagine. We'll find out exactly how things turnout from that point of view. But they've their ticket sale is now on and stuff. So I haven't bought my ticket yet, but it's on the to-do list. So go and have a look into that with BCH Argentina. Anybody listening to this show, especially I guess if you missed Bliss or you're more in that neck of the woods. Okay, let's talk Fiat food. So you mentioned this to me at Bliss. You said you've read this book. So it's actually a book by Matthew Lysiak, I think, or Lysiak, and he had some sort of contributions from Saifedean Ammous, the infamous, notorious author of the Bitcoin standard. So it's called Fiat Food: Why Inflation Destroyed Our Health and How Bitcoin Fixes It. I've read about half of it. I was reading it this week, but didn't quite get through all of it. And it's almost sort of like two books in one, really, because there's sort of basic narrative is, on one hand, it kind of gives a very Bitcoin-esque history of how money has been, diluted throughout the ages, and how the gold standard was in use, and then Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of it could be like a Bitcoin book in one sense, but then alongside that, there's this sort of second narrative, which is about how the institutional capture, particularly of American media and sort of academia, has been used to change the diet and lifestyle habits of Americans, with loads of examples of how essentially people were redirected over a period of decades away from eating very animal fat, meat and dairy based diets into more like cereals and grains and sugar, with this whole it doesn't go too much into the medicine really of it, or at least not the first half of it, but talking to some degree about how that's impacted everyone's health. And obviously we now live in a time of rampant obesity and problems with all kinds of metabolic diseases and stuff like that maybe weren't that common a few years ago. And of course, I'm no medical expert, and people can look into this themselves. Some people might just say, well, lifespans are getting longer, so you're going to have more of those diseases and so forth. But personally, I wouldn't say that accounts for all of it. Like, once you really look into this dietary stuff, there's a lot to it. So tell me about why you were reading this book, and why you thought it important, or why it was resonating to you.
So full disclosure, I have not finished it either, and I have basically the gist understanding and cliff notes on it, and I've read part of it, and I'll talk about the relevant parts to me. I think the last quarter of the book is essentially a BTC pitch, which there's no need to cover that. But a little back story on the author, and again, I'm not sure if it's Lysiak, whatever his last name is, Matt. He actually approached Safe after reading the Bitcoin Standard, and I think that's how they formed that relationship, because there's a section in the Bitcoin Standard that mentions fiat food loosely, and so he essentially expounds on that chapter. I read the Bitcoin Standard back when I was a laser-eyed maxi. I think from first principles, it's fine. First principles of money, it gives a good history of money, which I think is beneficial to people. And then just stop talking when they start singing BTC's praises. But this book, what really resonated with me, and it's funny because the author actually puts into words something I have thought for a long time, and I'll explain why. I don't know if you got to the section in there where he talks about the Seventh-day Adventist Church and
Yes.
Harvey Kellogg. Okay, I was raised Seventh-day Adventist. My father was a Seventh-day Adventist preacher. My grandfather was a Seventh-day Adventist preacher. I've been spoon-fed this health message my entire life. Still get spoon-fed it by my mother, who lives across the street from us on an ongoing basis, bless her heart. So this, when he pointed this out, my hairs on the back of my neck kind of stood up. At the end of the day, the basic tenet of this book is talking about how subsidized agriculture is focused on cheap processed foods, not only for profit margin, but more nefariously to obfuscate the real impact of inflation. Because it's a lot easier to crank out crappy, cheap, processed, grain-based foods than it is to push a proper nutrition, proper human diet that has actually nutritious foods. And where people see this the most is again, back to my early statement, is at the grocery store. A housewife or whoever does the purchasing of furniture may do that every decade, but she's going to that grocery store every week and seeing the difference in cost of the food she's buying for the family. That may be a very nuclear family traditional approach. My wife does the shopping, so that's what I can relate to. Yeah, the center part of the grocery stores where all the processed crap is where the money is made by big agriculture, not by the actual nutritionally dense foods that you'll find on the outskirts, your deli, your meats, your dairy, etc. So the author tying that back to specifically the Adventist Church, Ellen G. White, Harvey Kellogg, his apprentice Cooper, I was like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I've thought for quite some time. And again, I work with a lot of seniors, and a lot of them are Adventists because I was steeped in that community, grew up in that community. I'm still very much connected to that community. I have a lot of clients that are still part of that community, and I see the rate of diabetes and heart conditions and cancer from people that are primarily eating substitutes for a proper human diet, and that is highly processed foods. He mentions Loma Linda there in the book as well as an epicenter that's kind of pushed this proselytization of their health message. I had cancer 3 years ago. I guess closer to 4 now is when I was diagnosed. I'm technically 2 years since my last treatment. You can probably see here on my neck, I had squamous cell carcinoma of the head and neck, 25 rounds of radiation to my neck. After surgery, they took out 131 lymph nodes from my neck. I actually had my surgery done at Loma Linda, not because it was Loma Linda, but because one of my my lifelong grade school friends is a head and neck cancer surgeon, and I trusted him implicitly. So he actually did my surgery. Coincidental that he happened to be at Loma Linda. But point being is that group and that organization has been pushing this health message for quite some time, and I see the fallout of it in my clients and in myself, because I, by and large, ate that way for a majority of my life. Now, I haven't, their Adventists are very much vegetarian. They push a lot of vegetarian products. And so they use all of these substitutes, lots of soy to replace meat-based products. So instead of ham, they have something called wham. Instead of chicken, they have something called fried chick. Instead of like dumplings, chicken dumplings, they have something called the gluten-based, wheat-based, or soy-based products that basically try to fake the taste of meat. They're pretty poor imitations, but they do taste good, in my opinion. They taste good. They just taste nothing like the original. And then, in fact, they'll even shape them in the. You can get things in the shape of shrimp that are completely wheat-based or soy-based products, and it's just it's not nutritionally dense food. And to make it taste good, they have to fill it with all kinds of other garbage, high in sodium, which is not necessarily the worst thing, but all kinds of other preservatives and added fillers to make these things taste good. And a lot of the community eats this stuff and are having significant health issues because of it. at the end of the day, diet is a very, very personal thing, very personal, and people get hot about it. They will, much like BTC versus BCH, the vegans versus the carnivores or the non-vegans. It's a very a big contentious issue out there, and so ultimately, I would never tell anybody what to do in that regard. All I can do is share what I have done and the journey that I've been through. The moment I got diagnosed with cancer, I went vegan, straight vegan. This is about 3 years ago. I went straight vegan because that's what I had been spoon fed my entire life. I'm like, cut out everything. Well, the good part of that is I cut out processed foods in that process. And I think that really is the killer. Processed foods. You can do much worse than being a vegan. At the end of the day, if you're just eliminating processed foods, you're giving yourself a huge, huge leg up in that regard. But I went vegan for about 6 months, and I'm like, I'm dealing with cancer here. I've got to make this a priority. And I'm 48 now. Had my first kid at 42. We were very late bloomers. Have 2 daughters. I was like, I want to be around for my kids. Granted, I'm going to be 61 at my daughter's high school graduation. They're going to have to be rolling me out in a wheelchair. But I want to be around to see my kids grow up. And having a later start in life here, I've got to give myself the biggest leg up I can, nutrition-wise. My approach was, I'm going to control what I can and leave the rest of the powers that be. And that's still generally my approach. I have complete control over what I put in my mouth. And so I went down the vegan path, and then I started reading and listening to different perspectives on diet, and learned that most of what I was spoon-fed my entire life was rooted in nonsense. And so when this book came out and said this is why they've pushed this for so long, it made a lot of sense to me. And again, tying it back to economics and fiat at the end of the day, and the debasement of the currency, it's a lot easier to obfuscate that inflationary pressure at the grocery store with these highly processed, cheap, easily replicatable, long preserved foods than it is to actually push and promote a proper human diet of whole foods that are perishable. And it made a lot of sense to me. So through my journey and my path, starting out vegan, moving to more of a ketogenic diet. I did that for a while, which has a lot of benefits, especially if you know anyone that suffers from epilepsy. I mean, that's essentially how the ketogenic diet was invented, is to help people with severe epilepsy.
Did you do this simultaneously? Like, were you vegan and keto?
No. Well, I guess, yeah, for a portion there I was, which means I ate a hell of a lot of avocados.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah, because it really is hard to get in the healthy fats eating a vegan diet. But thankfully, I love avocados. I still eat at least an avocado a day now. But my diet has absolutely changed. So did the ketogenic thing for a while. And then started listening to some of the information and reading up the information on carnivore. Dr. Ken Berry is a Tennessean here, is very influential. Anthony Chafee, Sean Baker, these are all influencers that are big advocates of carnivore diet. And I said, I hadn't been, so before going straight vegan, I hadn't been vegan prior to that point. I'd eaten basically anything I wanted pre-cancer, and which probably played a role in my cancer. I wasn't obese, but I definitely was not in shape. I was at least 30 pounds heavier than I am now. I ate whatever I wanted. I didn't discriminate, and I love food, love it all. There's nothing that I do not like. I have preferences, of course, like everyone, but I'll try anything once. Can't eat oysters. I've tried oysters exactly 4 times. I've thrown up exactly 4 times after eating oysters within 3 hours. So my body said no. I tried them Rockefeller, baked, every way I've tried them. I was like, well, maybe I can try it this way. Nope. Any bit of oyster that goes into my mouth is going to come back out within a matter of hours. So learned my lesson the hard way there. But the point is I love food and I didn't discriminate. in my teens, I really backed off of sodas. Sodas are probably the worst thing you can put in your body on an ongoing basis. So I cut back on that. Hadn't done that in a long time, but anything else I didn't discriminate. And I had a huge sweet tooth. Always had dessert. Always had dessert, and sometimes multiple portions. This is a pretty bad trait I got from my father. He wasn't a big dude, but my dad passed away about 9 years ago, by the way. He wasn't a big guy, but he could eat the equivalent of 5 men in a sitting, and I think that played a role in his demise as well. Point is I love food and I didn't discriminate. So when I got diagnosed with cancer, as people often do, it's a very reflexive action there. I'm like, all right, I've been doing something wrong. I'm going to go to the opposite extreme now and just eliminate everything. And I guess, for that portion of time that I was vegan, I did drop quite a bit of weight. Granted, I was also going through radiation treatments to my neck, which imagine the worst sunburn of your life on the inside of your mouth and throat. So by week 11 of radiation, I could barely get anything down. I got down to, I'm not a big dude. I'm just under 6 foot, 5'11". But at the time I was almost 200 pounds. I got down to 155 toward the end of radiation. So I was looking pretty Schindler's List at that point. But anyway, so yes, post radiation, I was like, okay, I've got to get busy on getting this nutritional thing down and right. And so I did the ketogenic thing, moved into the carnivore thing, and I've never, and I can honestly say this, I've never felt better in my life as far as health and how my body reacts to what I'm now eating, which is primarily a carnivore diet. I do still include vegetables, but absolutely eliminating all processed foods. I only eat whole foods. I will cheat every now and again. We were just on vacation last week. You got a 5 and a 6-year-old screaming for ice cream. I'm going to have a bite of ice cream. It's going to happen. But I'm on an ongoing daily basis, and with my usual schedule, I'm eating 95% of my nutrition comes from animal-based protein. Lots of beef, fish, chicken, pork, sometimes all in the same bowl. I'll just mix it up. One of the upshots, I try to find the silver lining. Radiation is awful. The magic light is horrific, and it's the gift that keeps on giving the rest of your life. I have pretty bad fibrosis in my neck, and I can't feel anything from surgery. From my chin to the incision on my neck, that's completely numb. I can't feel anything, probably never will. One of the upshots, though, to radiation was it completely changed my taste buds. I had a massive sweet tooth before radiation. Post-radiation, I much prefer savory foods to sweet foods. Now, granted, since I've abstained from sugary foods, my taste buds have changed as well, but the radiation absolutely changed my palate. There's probably 2 months post-radiation that everything tasted like cardboard. I was like, well, I'll never be fat because I can't stand to eat anything. Everything tasted horrific. Finally, the taste buds started to come back online, and things started started to find pleasure in eating again. And you don't realize how much pleasure you derive from food until you can't taste anything for 4 months straight. And it's awful. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It is terrible. So thankfully, taste buds have changed, radiation and my palate, and so I much prefer savory foods. I really do enjoy my meals now. We go out to eat, it's generally a ribeye, maybe a filet, depending on the restaurant, with a little side of shrimp or something like that, and then a small portion of green vegetable, usually green beans, spinach, a collard, something like that, something green. I love sweet potatoes, but I try to abstain from those. They'll spike your insulin pretty high. Even though they do have a lot of other nutritional value, they spike your insulin. So starchy stuff I try to stay away from. Rice, potatoes, things that are starchy. Your body doesn't know the difference between pounding a Coke and drinking a glass of orange juice or eating a potato. It's going to turn it into glucose. The refined sugar is a more direct path to your bloodstream, which is arguably more damaging. But starchy foods and most carbohydrates in general are going to be turned into glucose in your body, which causes insulin spikes. And that really is the biggest malady I would say we're dealing with as far as nutrition and health worldwide is diabetes. And that is directly tied to carbohydrate intake, processed foods, refined sugar, that spikes the insulin, which causes inflammation. And it's a domino effect. All of these maladies, autoimmune conditions, skin conditions, cancer. Cancer can't live without glucose. A lot of people don't know that. Cancer has to have glucose in order to thrive and spread. And there's a train of thought out there that thinks you can actually starve cancer, or at least prevent its growth, further growth, by starving it of glucose. And that is going to be directly impacted by what you're putting in your mouth on an ongoing basis. So again, I take the approach that I'm controlling what I can and leaving the powers that be handle the rest. My type of cancer has a high cure rate, 95% cure rate, so the odds are definitely in my favor. But I've also had some unlucky events happen in life, so that 5% may end up getting me. But I'm going to give it hell until that time and control what I can. So it starts with nutrition. And I would say nutrition is 85, 90% of your health. You got to move to at the end of the day, but nutrition, what you're putting in your body on an ongoing basis, has a much bigger impact. If I kick the side of my car and put a big dent in it, it's going to keep driving down the road. If I put Coke in the gas tank, it's not going to go very far at the end of the day. And so what you're putting in your mouth on an ongoing basis is the most impactful. I work out about 3 days a week, which maintains. I'm not going to bulk up really very much by working out 3 days a week. I'm going to maintain, but I'm still moving and exercising. If you're wanting to put on muscle, you're going to have to sacrifice some other area of your life and put in the time and effort. You're going to have to lift heavy things for at least 4+ days a week consistently. And if you're training and you're trying to achieve something, or a bodybuilder, you're putting 5, 6 minimum days a week. Most bodybuilders will do at least 6 days a week. So exercise and strength training and resistance training certainly plays a role there in overall health. But by and large, the majority of your health is going to come from what you're putting in your mouth on an ongoing basis. I'm blathering on here, Jeremy. I don't know if you have questions or want to segue or ask anything else in this regard.
This is good stuff. I mean, I'll say from my point of view, I definitely, obviously diet is important. I would push back that it was 85 or 90%. I mean, you've also got your exercise, you've got your sleep, you've got sunlight, a huge factor, and also your mental health, which is heavily linked to your social life. So I would definitely, mix all those ingredients into the equation. But food is undoubtedly a huge part of it, and fixing any one part of that spread of options, then, like you said, it's the reverse of eating the crappy foods, which snowballs into more disease and problems, and then you eat worse because you're in a rush or you're feeling crap, and so you need that quick relief. It's the other way around too with the good habits. If you fix one part of it, you'll feel better and more alert and more engaged in the world, and then that will help jump on the better train with the other ones. I'm definitely no nutrition expert, and it's probably something I could do better about, but like anyone, I really notice if I'm eating well, and I am a believer in having a fairly heavy meat and dairy type of diet. Growing up, I did eat a lot of pasta. Probably I've tried to, although a lot of the time it would be like bolognese is very heavy, like tomato and minced sauces, so maybe it wasn't too far off the mark, and a lot of cheese, but I do try and pay attention to that these days, if I'm eating more pastas, more potato, I love potato, man. I've really gotta tamp down on myself there. But like you said, having it like a sweet tooth, I'm lucky in that I've always been a big fan of savory foods. I've never been too much of a sweet tooth. But interestingly, my brother is very much the opposite. So I'm sure there is, you know, a genetic component to it, or certainly a biological component that some people have certain preferences, but I've been lucky in that way. And I think anybody should at least experiment with these kind of things. Like you say, it is individual. It's not up to me, even if I was an expert, I think, really to say what anybody should or shouldn't eat. I know some, you know, people who are vegetarians who are very, very healthy, and you know, obviously that's working for them, particularly women. I don't know if that's just my bias or just what I've noticed, or I don't know, some little quirk of the universe, but I know quite a few very, very healthy vegetarian women, so I think maybe they are more able to get away without, you know, chowing down the steaks, but maybe that's just something I want to believe because I love steak. I don't know. But yeah, I think anybody, you know, listening to this show, I would definitely just say to look into this kind of stuff and maybe, you know, read up a couple of books and also just experiment. Don't trust, verify, you know, just try it out for yourself. Take 2 weeks, pick a certain, you know, type of diet you're going to eat that, and maybe just write down, like, what do you feel? That's how I do it. And then if I notice a specific, you know, pattern, I'll dig into it. And I think that's really one of the lessons of Bitcoin, and it's no surprise to me that this kind of meat eating and other stuff like that has kind of come into the Bitcoin community more on the BTC side, much more. But I'm unsurprised that those things are related, because once you start looking into institutional scams with money that you've just taken for granted your entire life, it's natural that then you would start to think, wait, like, does this apply to other things that I've taken for granted, whether it be the media or whether it be, food or politics or any a part of society or psychology, anything like that. You can usually find those same dynamics at play, and most people have at least one, if not multiple, blind spots from those, just from where they were raised and the assumptions they have. So that's kind of my thinking on this topic, I'd say.
Yeah, I would pigtail on your and I appreciate you bringing that up. Yes, I think exercise is absolutely crucial, and I would say exercise is more important for mental health than anything. Exercise is certainly going to help your physical health, absolutely. I think food has the biggest impact on your physical health. Exercise is going to help your physique, certainly going to help your physique, but more importantly, it's going to, I think, have the biggest impact on you mentally. If you're feeling down, you feeling like crap, if you're stressed, I mean, go for a run, go lift something heavy, and have the self-awareness to monitor how you feel pre and post that exertion of physical effort. It's dramatic, in my opinion, and it has the biggest impact on mental health over everything. I'm married with kids. I don't need to be Fred Flex. I just don't want to be a fat ass at the end of the day. More from a health aspect. Do I enjoy going to the gym? Not really. The thing I look forward to is listening to the Bitcoin Cash podcast at the gym, because that's really the only time I can get a couple hours to myself to ingest information and actually listen to something I want. The closer you get to 50, when you're lifting heavy objects, the joints really pay a price. I've got tennis elbow in this arm. I got golfer's elbow in this arm. I often wake up where my hands are pretty stiff, almost arthritic. So there's a price that comes with that. And because of that, I may have to scale back on the weight and do more repetition, do lower weight, just more repetition while trying to get the same goal. But it doesn't matter as long as you're moving. The moment you stop moving, your body is going to atrophy. That's just the reality. And so the longer you can keep moving, the more longevity you will have and more quality of life you will have, both physically and mentally. So I just wanted to highlight what you brought up there, which I completely agree with. The sleep aspect, this is the biggest challenge for me and always has been. My wife and I struggle every night to get to bed before midnight. It's a real struggle, and it's no fault but our own. These damn devices right here, it's just it's really hard to be more proactive with the sleep department. And we've got younger kids now; they're finally sleeping through the night. But the first few years, especially when you're raising kids, you're not getting much sleep because they're waking up at all hours. But there's a great book out there if you want another read when you're done with Fiat Food. There's a great book called Why We Sleep that is a fantastic read. And the author, of course, every author has the same view. He posits that it's the most important aspect of overall health is getting a proper sleep. So, something I absolutely struggle with and we're trying to do better with on an ongoing basis. It just takes discipline and being regimented and creating that pattern on an ongoing basis, like anything. And the gym now is part of my routine. Do I look forward to it? No, it's just something I do. It's like I'm not jazzed about the gym. I'm not jazzed to be there. There's other things I could be doing, but I focus on the positive. I get to listen to a cool podcast, and I'm going to improve my physical and mental health by doing so. So I just incorporate it as part of my routine.
Yeah, I do enjoy the gym, but
I salute you, sir.
Again, it just comes from a long comes from doing it, I guess, a long time, and I'm not some bodybuilding like fanatic or anything, but I think, like you said, it's just routine, and a lot of it, to me, if anybody's interested in getting more into health, well, I would certainly recommend running as well too, and it's really hard. It's really hard to start. You don't want to do it. You're probably going to feel like crap immediately afterwards. It's going to hurt. It's going to be, but the point is, like, if you can stick at it, you kind of have to make it a priority. Like, that's how I did it. I had some friends who were into it, and I was like, wanted to be competitive. So I found a way to motivate myself by, well, if I can beat them at it, even though they were, much better in quotation marks. So that was one way I got really interested in running, and it sucked for at least 3 or 6 months, but running is really good because firstly you'll be outside, so you can run around different places. You can run through the park or a different neighborhood or something during the day if you can. It's really nice. And then at a certain point it goes from painful to kind of like boring and serene. And then you're really cooking, because now if you have a running routine, you're getting your exercise in similar to the gym, but you've also blocked out space where you'll start thinking up new ideas, or you can listen to a podcast or listen to music, and once it becomes part of your routine, then there's just no question about it, really, I think, is the main thing.
Have you experienced the runner's high that I hear about?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say not on a massive basis or anything, but I mean, like, a couple of times I've been running and then I'm just like spontaneously start laughing because I'm in such an excellent mood. Probably look like a nut job for anybody else that's around it, but you just get that feeling of like, it feels like you're breaking through reality. You're like, nothing can stop me. I mean, what are you going, like 5Ks an hour, you feel like, woo, that's it. And especially as well, like, sometimes at night is a great time as well to run. Don't be careful, in your area, may or may not be like sort of dangerous, but running at night, by the ocean or something like that, it's amazing. And I go running. I look forward to going on runs with my mates who are into it too as well, so it can be a social thing. Like that's another way to get into it. If you have somebody who's already big on it, make them your gym partner and make it an accountability thing. Just send them a Bitcoin and say, look, if I don't show up to whatever 4 gym sessions over the next 2 weeks, don't send it back. And then boom, you've already now suddenly that gym is looking a lot better than it was before.
Money, the great motivator, for sure.
Well, money and pride. Then your pride is also on the line, so you're getting, two for one special.
That's
all right. Yeah, go.
I was just gonna say I did a lot of sideways sports in my youth, skateboarding, snowboarding. I still snowboard whenever I can. Volleyball, a lot of impact sports, and my knees have taken the toll because of that. Trying to strengthen those and get up. I have run in the past, and again, exercise to me is more of a necessity than a passion. I'd much rather be out, mountain biking or riding a motorcycle or doing something sport or physically active. The gym is it's easy, it's convenient, and I just make it part of my routine. But hats off to any runners. I've got friends that are avid runners, and like, I'm doing another Ironman, I'm doing a marathon. I'm like, go for it, I'll cheer you on. I have no desire, but that's great. That's great. Whatever works for you. And again, as far as motivation,
exactly.
In my experience, there's no greater motivation than dealing with a health scare. And cancer was the biggest motivation for me by far. And I've heard this before getting cancer. I've talked to doctors that said, my healthiest clients are people that have had major health scares in the past, and they take it seriously from that point on. So, yeah, whatever it takes to get you to be a better human being in all aspects. Find what motivates you and moves you, or find something you absolutely hate about yourself. It's all going to be hard. You just got to pick your hard. Going to the gym might be hard for you, but diabetes is much more hard, I promise you. Doing the hard thing, there's always going to be a counter that's equally or even more hard that you have to say, I don't want that. I'm going to choose this, and I know this is a more positive outcome at the end of the day. So pick your hard is really what it comes down to.
Exactly. You're gonna have to suck it somewhere, so may as well at least be in charge of where,
Exactly.
Okay, so we got to talk a little bit about, like I said, the community, I feel like, is getting back into gear. Those first couple of weeks after Bliss, it was a bit quiet. Probably everybody was recovering a little bit, maybe mulling over some new ideas, but now the gears are grinding again, and we're getting some results. So this week we had Sayoshi Nakamario from Casual BCH announce the new alpha of his product, fundme.cash, which is essentially Flipstarter, but with cash tokens. So you can go on his site and create, if you do this, by the way, just only use like 0.001 BCH or something like that, because he might rug you at any time, and he has a large banner about that. But he's cooked up this kind of Flipstarter style contract where you can use Wallet Connect with your Cashionized wallet or with some other wallet, and then contribute into people's Flipstarters, and only the person who created the contract can withdraw all the money once it's past the threshold. And for individual contributors, you get a cash token receipt back, which you can then cash in for your stake, either if the campaign doesn't end up getting funded in time, or if you just decide, okay, I actually didn't want to put my money in, I've changed my mind. So the downside, I guess, relative to the existing Flipstarter that we have, is that you don't have a good way to put messages there. It's really nice that everybody can get credit with their names on the current Flipstarter. So that's one thing I really hope he looks to add. But I tried it out, and I was able to fund some of Cheap Lightning's thing, and then I rugged him, and I cashed in my receipt, and I got the money back. But it's a little bit it's alpha software, but it all works, and I was super impressed, because this is something that has been theorized from even before cash tokens was implemented. Was people were saying, oh, this would be so great with Flipstarter, because then you can have your receipts, and maybe people can then stack up like kind of community credit if they have a whole bunch of NFTs from different Flipstarters that they've funded. Then that's one way to build up credibility and reputation, and this tooling as well is so much, like using the Electron Cash plugin is such a runaround. Like it's going to be so hard to onboard huge amounts of people to using that kind of stuff. So we're really starting to see the first glimmers of like really powerful stuff appearing out of all the work that has gone into Cash tokens and Wallet Connect and so forth over the last year. So I am absolutely psyched about this. Are you a big Flipstarter guy, or are you loving this new app, or what do you make of it?
I saw this post and it piqued my interest. I wanted to give it a try. I noticed that you had recently done a Flipstarter, then pulled it down. I was wondering if you were going to use this instead. Was that your angle?
I was tempted. I'm tempted to. I mean, I don't think I can, because, like I said, Sayoshi might just rug me. Although I would talk to him and ask him. But I put up the Flipstarter and then I tried. There was some kind of error with it, so we were trying to like bug fix that, and I put it up and then I deleted it in about half an hour once I realized that it was going to be a problem. But it might end up being that we just wait another month or two until this is ready, and then just do kind of like an extra big one kind of to cover things. That might be my angle, but I honestly really want to use this. I would rather use this than our existing Flipstarter. I'm just not 100% sure that it's ready yet.
Yeah, I've heard. I've never used Flipstarter myself. I have heard from people that have that it's, and I don't mean to throw them under the bus because I've never used it, but I've heard some negative feedback for those that have launched campaigns on Flipstarter. So for what it's worth, so maybe this is. Competition is healthy. It's always healthy to have options out there, because it pushes everybody in the space to make something better. So I'll click around and poke around with this here at some point, I'm sure. But any development in this space is just going to add to the snowball, and that's what we're trying to do here, is create an ecosystem that is an unstoppable force. Super Cyan, per your video. So this helps. Every little bit helps. As long as people are interested in this space and building in this space, it's going to attract users, and users will attract merchants and the whole nine. It works together harmoniously. So yeah, I'm a fan of anything that's being built on BCH.
Yeah, the Flipstarter has been like just so massive for the community, because even though it has been kind of as hard to use, as it is, and it hasn't even necessarily improved that much over time, and there's still, there's quite a lot to know about it, and it's quite technical, and then even when people got funded, a lot of them didn't deliver. But it was just that linchpin. Like, I feel like it's just one of those things that it just kind of got it over the line, right? The BCH community, just when it was really struggling a bit, when it needed to get out of the XCC funding and stuff, Flipstarter came through there. It's been huge in the show, being able to run as long as it has, and a couple of other, specifically the dev projects mostly, have got funding like Cash Script and stuff like that. So that has been massive for the community, and I can see that if we can just make it even a little bit more accessible, a little easier to use, then with the same kind of idea, then it will just open it up to a much bigger pool of people, and it's just so powerful to have the ability to get that funding to whoever needs it. And like I sort of thought, oh, okay, well, maybe, we already have a donation address, like, isn't that just the same thing? But it isn't. People really like it when there's a listed set of deliverables, and they can see that other people have contributed, and they know, it's not just like some open-ended blank check. Like, they really like that kind of accountability model, at least in my experience. So I'm super jazzed that we get this.
What is your I guess what are the downsides to Flipstarter? The feedback that I've gotten, again, I've never used it myself, but I got the impression that it was clunky and not very intuitive. So maybe it was just user error from that individual. What is your impression there of what are the downsides to Flipstarter?
No, it is. It is very hard to use. Like the main way to use it has been this custom Electron Cash plugin that you need to download and then install. So not only is that like quite a few steps, and it kind of only works with the Electron Cash wallet, basically, as far as I understand it. So you're already in the very hardcore users there. You know, it's not like people you're onboarding at the hairdresser with Celine. They're not, you know, going to be getting into all this. Although in the future, with something like this, with Cash Starter, then they could be, you know, we could have a tab there with all the different projects, and people could have the details and everything there. And if they liked something, they could just put, you know, type in the amount and then bam, fund, and that would just be it. Boom, immediately, and one button, just cash out if they don't want it. You know, like if we had a tab in Celine with all the different projects, once people started browsing it, then it's like a menu. You know, you can be like, I want this, I want this, I want this, and you could just put your money directly into it. That would be amazing, right? But Flipstarter is quite hard to use, and then because you have to do the plugin, it's also sort of somewhat a security risk. You know, if there was some kind of bug with that, it could like rug the funds out of your wallet, which is not going to be the case with this new stuff once we've got it with Cash Connect, and it's all, you know, the contract's been verified and stuff like that. It's going to be much clearer to the users. There's no risk of loss there. Obviously, there's a problem on the sort of the social side, which is that the accountability mechanisms have been kind of lacking, right? Some people have got funded for a lot of money and then just never really delivered, or they've delivered kind of crappily and not really up to the standard that they promised or that people expected. So that's why something like this, again, in 3 to 5 years, when BCH is going to be just absolutely dominating the crypto industry, one thing that's going to be a cornerstone of it is going to be that we have this kind of community funding, with not only built at a technical level, but also at a social level, right? It takes time for people to adjust to these new models and figure out ways of having accountability and so forth. So
got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Good. Yeah.
Those are the key points, I'd say.
Anything new being built in the space that pushes things forward, I'm all for. And competition is healthy. It's crucial. It's crucial. So, yeah, bring it on. Bring it on. Exciting, sure.
The next steps, we're getting there. Okay, we've got another piece of good news. Some people have been asking about this, and we've had a bit of an update, which is that Roger has been sort of released. So the news came out that Roger Ver has been released from Spanish jail actually on May the 17th. So actually, you know, just after Bliss, he apparently posted $163,000 in bail. So, you know, chump change, handed in his passport and had to go check in to the court every 2 days. He's been very quiet. Like he, you know, if he was out and about, he certainly wasn't making it known or tweeting or, as far as I've heard, talking to, you know, behind the scenes. I'm sure probably to somebody, but, you know, I haven't. He clearly kept this under wraps. Obviously, that would also be, you know, very understandable in his situation. Who knows what all the different moving gears are there, and probably best to not rock the boat too much in the situation that he's in. So it makes sense. But it's just great news to hear that he's at least not in prison on a daily basis, and people were asking about that in the community. So obviously there will be any further updates on this show, but that's the latest news for anybody who's wondering what's happening there. And I would guess the next news we'll get would be if he himself wanted to publish something about it, or someone related to him. Right, but a bit of a sigh of relief, because people were a bit like, well, Spanish prison doesn't have the best track record. So.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I saw, and I don't know if he even uses his username on Reddit, but I did see where Memory Dealers said glad to be out on a recent post. So that was definitely good to see. You know, there's 3 sides to every story, his, theirs, and what really happened. And usually people don't find out what really happened. For all I can tell, this is a witch hunt at the end of the day. But, you know, who knows? You know, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in that he tried to cross all the T's and dot all the I's when he when he expatriated from the U.S. nearly 10 years ago. I mean, if you're hiring a legal team of accountants and CPAs and attorneys to properly leave a country, I'd say that's at least a good faith effort in trying to do everything above bar. If you're relying on a team of experts to help you do so, and I think that works in his favor for sure. But we've seen good people get thrown under the bus for less things. So I remain hopeful that this will all work out in his favor. But I've also learned not to put people on pedestals. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we all do make mistakes, whether they are intentional or otherwise. So, time will tell. It always does, and I hope the best for him. The one thing that I can say in all the content that I've consumed from Roger and reading his book is he seems to be a what you see is what you get kind of person. He seems to be very transparent and authentic, which is hard to come by in this day and age. So I think that at least on a personal level works for me, and giving him the benefit of the doubt. Let's hope he doesn't get McAfee'd while he's in Spain. But they took his passport, so he can't go anywhere.
Well, I think there's actually a separate requirement that he doesn't leave the country, because I believe he was one of the individuals with multiple passports, so he could have just handed one in and then been sliding out of there. But I think they've closed that loophole.
I connected with Aaron Day right after you had him on your podcast about a month or so ago, a couple of months ago maybe now, which was a fantastic podcast. And he and I have been talking, and he's been talking with Roger since he got thrown in jail. I guess they have a personal relationship there. And so he's kind of been giving me some behind the scenes info there. I don't know anything that you don't know in that regard, but it'll be neat to see how this plays out. And I just hope they don't drag their feet on it. If you're going to do something, do it. Shit or get off the pot. It's the problem is they don't have. If they can keep him there indefinitely and just drag their feet on it, they have no motivation to do otherwise, especially if they're trying to make an example out of him, which is what it seems to be. So who knows? I'll be watching.
Yeah, good that he's out of prison, but obviously, still a bit up in the air. And all the best, Roger, with sorting that out, and to any extent that it's been sort of injustice. Hopefully that works out for the best, but you do never know. All right. Also in crypto this week, we've had maybe the most bizarre starting, event of 2024. I did not have this on my bingo card. I don't know that anybody did, but Iggy Azalea, the Australian rapper, and I actually quite like Iggy Azalea, a fancy, absolute banger song. She is now sort of beefing with Vitalik Buterin, of all people. She launched a meme token called Mother on Solana and promoted it basically with a lot of sexualized photos of herself, not porn exactly, but sort of softcore. What do they call it? Thirst traps. She's got so she using that strategy and who knows what else, pumped her meme coin up to a $200 market cap, and Vitalik was sort of clearly not really loving this, because he made he tweets a decent amount, but he made a quite serious tweet about this, and he said, quote, "I'm feeling quite unhappy about this cycle's celebrity experimentation so far. Financialization as a means towards an end I can respect if the end is worthy. Healthcare, open source software, art, etc. Financialization as the final product, vomiting emoji." Ashton and Mila's Stoner Cats was vastly more honorable than anything we've seen from this 2024 celebrity meme coin era. At least there was an actual show being funded. How do we push things in a better direction? End quote. And he sort of added some more details explaining about that and linked to a blog post that he'd previously written about this topic. That Ashton and Mila, for people who don't know, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis did a sort of NFT drop thing, like back like very early in crypto, like 2014 or 2015, I want to say. And that was kind of a forerunner to this era of like celebrity grifting that we're in now, except they used it to fund a kind of Rick and Morty style cartoon or something, but it was very early experimentation in this arena. Now, Iggy was not having a bar of this and posted a meme of like a woman breastfeeding a child, and she's edited her head onto the mother and Vitalik's head onto the baby and captioned it, "He was just hangry." And then she went even further and spoke about him on a podcast like even today, I think. Jet, can you pull that up? And just starting from the Vitalik section, let's hear her thoughts on what went down here.
Attacked if we leave this podcast and I don't ask. Tell me about the Vitalik tweet. That I don't know if you understand. That might be like a top 5, top 10 all-time crypto Twitter tweet. Like, tell me about the Vitalik tweet.
I mean, I woke up and everybody on my like phone, on my real line, not like Telegram or the internet, like my actual line was like, yo, like maybe you should ask him like to chat, and was trying to be really diplomatic about it. But I just think like for me, it's not that deep, like just so everyone knows, like I'm not mad at this man's opinion, whatever. I question what you're doing with gas money, so it's rich of you to have an opinion about charities and hospitals, whatever the fuck you're saying. I'm like, that's rich. Let's talk about the gas fees, but the gas tax. Okay, maybe some people shouldn't have an opinion sometimes, but I respect that you made something. Don't get me wrong, I do. It's not like I'm not like we got beef, but peace doesn't pay. Peace is not profitable. We're in meme coin world. If I'm going to do something in the meme coin space, I have to honor the way that it should be approached, and I don't think it's by being necessarily diplomatic. Like, I think there's a perfect time to make a meme off this, and so I'm fucking gonna, and that's really it. So I have to, like I have to, because you've left it open for me too with your essay. That's all. I know it's not particularly about me, but I think it is particularly about me, to be honest with you. And that's it. And I hope he can see it and respect it. Like, it's not that deep, really, but respect the culture. You're not in Solana. That's not your space. So I don't know that you necessarily
hating from outside the club a little bit.
You're a little bit hating it from outside the club. I know I just got in the club, so I'm not saying that I can speak for the whole motherfucking club, but like the club can't even handle me right now. So I think I felt what you would all enjoy would be me dunking on that and swinging off the rim a little bit, and so that's just how
there we go. Well, I did enjoy that, Iggy, so you were right about that, but it's a little bit of a clown world that we're living in here. Iggy Azalea apparently unaware that Vitalik is probably well within his rights to be commenting on Solana meme coins, as they would not be a thing almost certainly without his presence in history. Not to mention the fact that she seems to sort of imply that he's somehow grifting off gas fees as though he's like some oil tycoon who's slurping that up. It's like she does not understand the first thing about crypto or what's going on here, but it didn't stop her making a $200 million market cap. So what do you what do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think just another day in clown world sums it up nicely. She seems to have a bit of I am the main character syndrome going on here, which is expected of most celebrities, of course. I think you'll find few that aren't narcissists at the end of the day, but which is whatever. There's no, as the saying goes, there's no such thing as bad press or media because it's going to get eyeballs, and ultimately that's what she wants. All of these celebrities are constantly clawing for limelight, and they'll get it any way they can. And they've just found another grift and way to do so. I can't fault her for it. Go get it. Go get it. And if nothing else, trying to look at the silver lining here, if Iggy Azalea's, she should have called it Thought Coin. If her mother coin brings anybody new into this space that loses their ass and then finds the true path to hard money, then I'm a fan of it. So, and if it brings them into this space and they make a grip of money on it as well, then more power to them. Again, I can't begrudge anybody that makes money in the crypto space. Some are more egregious than others. Some are very clearly pump and dump grifts by people with influence, and maybe that's what she is. But if nothing else, if it brings some 14-year-old into this space that wasn't here otherwise, that can at least dip their toe into the crypto space and learn more about it. And if it leads them to sound money at the end of the day through some kind of crazy path, then I'm all for it. So more the merrier. Nobody's getting hurt here unless they're being forced to buy mother against their own will. So
yeah. Well, that's it. I actually thought the same thing as you. I thought, oh, this is brilliant. Like, not necessarily anything that's going on here. I'm honestly a little bit like, Iggy, this is a terrible take. But on the other hand, like you say, it does. If it's getting more, this is how crypto wins, right? It just gets more and more, even if it's a confused mess, even if nobody really knows what's going on. Iggy Azalea is probably bringing loads and loads of people who have no interest or insight into crypto to at least look at it. And even if they're getting everything wrong, they're still being involved and they'll still learn, perhaps slowly and painfully, but they'll kind of get the point. Very few people are going to get involved because of this and then afterwards think, no, fuck crypto, we should ban it and outlaw it. The biggest number one thing that gets people on Team Crypto is just being exposed to it, because then afterwards they go, oh, this wasn't such a big deal. Like, why is everybody freaking out about it? The government trying to ban it? So that's clearly unreasonable. It's fine. I tried it. It was fine. So I felt like we'd be getting a lot of good traction this way. And I wonder what we'll see next. I sort of said that maybe we're over the political event horizon where politicians couldn't really get in there and ban crypto. It's kind of past a critical mass. Now we're seeing even ever weirder, like, cultural crossovers. I have in the start guide on my site, if you read that at the very bottom at the end, I put a section about what's going to happen in the future, and one of the things I said was that crypto influencers are going to become some of the biggest influencers in the world. Of all people, why would Iggy Azalea be talking of Vitalik Buterin? But here we are, and this is going to be the new world that we live in. So I think it's honestly very bullish for crypto.
Yeah, nothing shocking anymore, for sure. Just wait. They'll learn their lesson when Solana crashes in 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks thereafter. That's when they'll learn their lesson, and then maybe they'll do a little digging to see that there's other things in this space than just shitcoins. At the end of the day, and they have their place. Anybody that's been in this place long enough, very few can claim they've never bought a shitcoin. So we've all done it. I'm embarrassed at my list of that I still hold, but it's like now it's to the point where it's do I even want to go through the hassle of trading it and swapping it and moving it to BCH because it's not significant enough in price. It's just sitting there. So I'm like, well, Hail Mary, maybe one of these will moon sometime, and then I'll cash it out. But
exactly.
So.
Exactly. You got to have at least one of those. I have exactly one. But one day maybe it'll come good. It's like buying a lottery ticket. You got to do it once in your life, even if mathematically it's stupid, just for the cultural experience. I think
That's it. I had a buddy that used to buy a lottery ticket every week of the year. And this was back when they only cost $1. Now they cost $2 here in the U.S. But he's like, $52 is a pretty cheap cost for a daydream. He's like, that's what I look at it as.
Exactly. I mean, I like that saying they have that the lottery is a tax on the mathematically illiterate. I do like that saying, but yeah, I'm glad that I bought one lottery ticket once in my life just to see what it was like, and I sat up and watched the number drawing, and then was like, shit, I didn't win.
Surprise!
I've got into bigger gambling after that. Crypto came up, so maybe it all started there. Okay, a couple other things just in the news this week. I thought to highlight Cauldron have released a major update which has made their site super fast. So if you haven't used Cauldron in a while, go check out cauldron.quest and maybe get some cash token yield farming going on there. Craig Wright's sentencing has been underway in the Copa case. It's not fully decided yet, but he, in the middle of his sentencing, released a video which looks like it's a hotel room in potentially Thailand. He was not specific about where he was, but people are like, he looks like he's fled the country and trying to escape the long arm of the law. Things might be getting more and more problematic for him. He can't necessarily go back to Australia, and then if he was hanging out in the UK, no longer a good option. He's running short of places to crash. And the third part of my debate with Lorenzo Ray will probably be on this week on Thursday at 7 p.m. UTC. For anyone who wants to watch that, we've already done parts 1 and 2, and we'll do final part 3 to wrap that up. So that's just a couple other things I had going on in the crypto scene. Anything there that catches your fancy to comment on, Steve?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I bought some sock and a few other things at Bliss, and I've not logged in since then, so I need to see how much quicker it's working. Now I've created a few liquidity pools there. Haven't seen any activity there yet, so I don't know if it's just a matter of volume and users or what, but is promising. Again, talking about from a crypto speculation point of view, it is promising to at least think that we're in on this cauldron at the beginning. And as more users come into the space, they're going to find it. There's always going to be demand for gambling in one way or another, and that's what these meme coins are. It doesn't matter the space they're in. People are always going to want to speculate in order to increase wealth. Cool being, I'm kicking myself for not getting sock months ago, back when it initially launched. Because if I were to cash them in, they'd be a very expensive pair of socks at this point.
I cashed them in, worth it, absolutely worth it. They will be the most expensive pair of socks I will ever buy, but totally worth it. They're super comfortable. I wore them to Bachata the other night. Everyone was loving it. Everybody like top tier, and the Cauldron guys are awesome as well too. I loved hanging out with them.
I did as well. Had some pretty good conversation with Halvor and Dagger there at Bliss. So yeah. Really cool. I love the retro look they kind of went with there. Reminds me, I grew up in the original Nintendo days as far as gaming, and so very reminiscent of that old pixelated graphics. So really cool. Craig Wright, what is there to say that hasn't already been said about Fake Toshi? I guess I would ask is there any possibility that Calvin Ayre sees any kind of repercussion for his complicitness in this situation?
Doubt it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the complicity is just that whatever bag he has of like 5 million BSV worth like 500 million that he thought he was going to cash in big on is all like worthless and he'll never be able to dump it. So
There you
any
go.
bag that he had, I'm sure, is more than enough kind of karmic repercussion, probably.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what rock he crawls under. Every time I hear somebody flee to Thailand, it makes me think of, okay, this is some kind of sexual deviant that's living out in Thailand, which would be fitting for a con man like Wright. So, yeah, we'll see what other news headline he pops up as in Thailand. So,
all right, we got question of the week. It comes from Noel Lavisa from the Bitcoin Cash City, Townsville, Australia. And he asked, this was quite a while ago, but it's a good question, and I've got them in the backlog because we can only do one, per episode. Tether is a major corrupting influence. What can we do to end Tether? Do you have any ideas?
I don't, but it's one of the questions I was actually going to ask you as well, in a roundabout way, because I've heard different things from different people. John and I talked about this, Emergent Reasons, when one of our original conversations, and the best that I can gather here is that they've never been fully audited, and so they're basically presenting and propping up BTC with another fiat version of USD. At the end of the day, by decree, they're just saying, yes, this is one-to-one reserve with no proof of that matter. So I would default to your expertise in here. You know much more about this than I would. So,
well, I think to me, like you're sort of hinting at it there, to me, people are very worried about Tether too. Like there's been a long history of people being like, Tether's going to blow up and, or the government's going to shut it down or whatever. But I think by this stage, it's pretty clear to say that the government clearly wants it around, right? If they wanted to get rid of it, they would have done something about it. I mean, they're busy, chasing after Roger Ver. Like those guys could be, hunting down Tether, but they're not, right? So I think the government just sort of wants it to be, and it's going to, either co-opt it or they already have, or they had from the start or whatever. But like you say, it's really just a substitute for fiat. So there's nothing specific that we need to do to stop Tether. It's really just the same answer as how do we stop the US dollar, which is spread non-custodial adoption, which also largely involves building some kind of killer apps or cultural impact or combination that gets people the desire to actually learn how to use crypto and then use it peer-to-peer. Like really the entire world is just, you can think of the entire world as being short BCH, and we're just going to have the world's, like, history's greatest short squeeze is essentially going to be whenever enough of the planet is using non-custodial BCH, that the ability to print fake BCH on Binance, on Tether, to churn it out of the Federal Reserve, fiat, fake dollars, all this stuff will just, at some point, it will just break and end, and the price of BCH, that's what they call hyper-Bitcoinization, right? BCH will just moon to infinity, and everything else will become valueless except for, real stuff, right? Like houses and bricks and whatever, right? So
hard assets.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I'm not particularly worried about will Tether blow up or not. I think it could happen or might happen at some point. People always say, okay, well, the government will just, they've got their fingers in it and they'll just wait until it's a key moment for crypto and then they'll pull it out to try and usher in the CBDCs. That's one theory. But I sort of feel like that doesn't really make too much sense, because if the best time to stop crypto is always yesterday. So if they had any more tricks in the bag, they should have already been pulling them out years ago. By this stage, we've got Iggy Azalea tweeting to Vitalik. So time's now, guys, if you're going to pull the rug, do it. So I think, there's nothing specific that we need to or even can do. It's just use BCH peer-to-peer and onboard people to do the same, really. And we don't know when it's going to be, but at some point we'll just pass it gradually, then suddenly. Same way that everyone was worried the government was going to ban Bitcoin, but day after day after day after day, crypto keeps spreading, and at some point everyone's just kind of like, man, it's decided it's not going to get banned. Same thing. One day it'll just be like, oh, Tether's blowing up. I didn't see that coming, but we've got enough peer-to-peer economy that just kind of makes sense.
So putting a spin on that very question from Noel Lavisa, what could happen to cause Tether to implode? What are some things that could happen? Barring you can't force an audit since they're not ruled or regulated by any kind of FINRA type agency.
Well, they already were. The New York Attorney General's looked into them and then released a report saying they're scammers and they don't have the backing that they claim to have, which was before when they'd only printed about 1% of what they've printed now. And then CoffeeZilla did a really good video about it, which is linked on my FAQ. I have an FAQ page about Tether, and it has a little bit about it. Basically says, look into this stuff from CoffeeZilla, because he already did a much more thorough review of it. So I think people who are super interested in this, that's where I would direct them to read more. But there's a bunch of things that could conceivably end Tether. One could be the government decides we're going to do a CBDC and Tether already has the rails, so we're just going to kind of co-opt it somehow and put enough resources in to go and grab it. Obviously, whoever is running Tether and whoever is involved in the shady back deals, whatever is going on there, it's pretty shady, so you can never put it past a couple bullets just find their way into the right, apartments, and then bang, that puts an end to it. Could be some kind of banking deal. Again, even though they're shady enough that they have a hard time getting banking partners, and they always manage it somehow because I guess they can always pay off enough people. They're making so much money that they can always find a way to pay off someone or get things going a little bit. But it could be that they just run out of road on that if the sort of pressure ramps up too high. Obviously, if BCH completely moons with enough P2P adoption, that would finish them. What's his name? Emergent Reasons would want me to say that if those guys and the BTC guys, if they get sick of pumping up BTC, if they decide, we're going to pump Monero, or if they switch teams to ETH or something like that, then they'll just rug it, and the BTC community will be wrecked with this titanic amount of selling pressure that seems to just come from nowhere and endlessly go on as they just switch all their funds into ETH or physical gold or whatever. So yeah, there's any or all of those scenarios. One of them is eventually going to play out. Yeah. I appreciate that feedback. I know there's a lot of nuance there, and I don't know all of the ins and outs, but thanks for sharing, for sure. Do you have some other questions? Yeah, hit me. Let's do it. I'll go as long as you want, so you just tell me when to shut up here. So I think people will be enjoying this episode, Jet. You're not in a rush, right? Let's do it. So back when I started going through the transition of being the laser-eyed maxi to the green shade Bitcoin Cash, so during that time, I started doing my own due diligence. And in the last, 6 months, I read The Block Size War by Jonathan Beers, and then just finished up, right before Bliss, finished up Hijacking Bitcoin. Between those two books, it answered a lot of my questions, especially Roger's book answered a lot of my questions because it was a great retort, if you will, to The Block Size War by Jonathan. But I still have a few questions here that are pressing and nagging that you may or may not be able to elaborate on. Feel free to talk, again, being the Lorax, speak for the geeks. Feel free to talk for the community and also share what you think personally in this regard. Some of these will be more personal, nuanced questions. Others are more broad for the community. But I guess out of the gate, when the block size, you lived through the Block Size War, correct? Yes. Well, I sort of have a tiny small bit of pride about that because I was, one of the most popular posters. I'm 100% sure. I don't have any stats to back that up, but I'm very, very sure. Like during when it was the hottest on Reddit, like I was making, detailed just like I do, on this show. It was like the earlier precursors of that. I would put up, posts explaining in detail one element or another in a thread. It would always get upvoted to the top of the thread with hundreds of, till eventually I got banned. And I do actually have somebody dug up like an archive, like they had an archived copy of some of my old like comments and stuff like that they sent to me. So at some point I want to do an episode where we dig back into that, because there's got stuff that I wrote 9 or 10 years ago, and by now a lot of it, some of it's like funny to look back on, some of it's like, wow, that was spot on, some of it's like, oh, maybe I missed the mark a little bit. But especially for my listeners that have been listening a long time, maybe for like the 150th episode or something like that, we can do a special episode, because I think it would be fascinating to hear like, I'm sure I'll read it in my voice, right? And I'm sure people will be able to hear it's the same me in my phrasing and stuff like that. But yeah, so anyway, I feel, quite that I was quite involved in it in that regard, even though I didn't go to any of the conferences. I was just I was pretty young at that time too, in Australia as a teenager, right? So
not your first rodeo.
Yeah.
So to that extent, and I also want to add here that your response to the post about Vitalik comparing the block size war and hijacking Bitcoin was bang on. Yes. Fantastic reply there. I caught that in Reddit. I don't know where else you posted it, but I read it there in Reddit. So I think that you're still
Shibinator.
Yeah, Shibinator. Okay, yeah.
So that's
right.
Trivia. That's because I joined Reddit because of the Dogecoin subreddit. So I'm also like a Dogecoin OG. When that was first gaining
somebody's going to be saying I joined Bitcoin Cash because of Mother 10 years from now.
Yes, exactly. Well, I was already a Bitcoiner at that point, right? But Dogecoin became was the meme thing that was popping off in 2014, mostly on Reddit, and so I joined that when it was absolutely going crazy, and the Dogecoiners are the sheebs. Although now you also have Shiba Inu, so I don't know if they're also sheebs or what, but that was it. I was like the Terminator and a sheeb. Like I could say like the Dogecoin Terminator. That was the idea. Yeah,
that's great. So during that, when things came to a crescendo, and I guess it was Bitcoin ABC that was the official hard fork, was it not? That was that was the official hard fork. So why did the community, and again, answer this as the Lorax and as Jeremy, why not Litecoin or Dash or one of these other proof of work options? Why fracture the community? Why not join another community that was essentially trying to do the same thing? And I know there's a lot of nuance here between these different coins, but it seems like Dash actually had the best kind of upshot there. And again, maybe I don't know enough about the tech there and what's under the hood as far as limitations, but it seemed like that had the best upshot as far as peer-to-peer electronic cash during that time frame. So why didn't the community either pivot to that? Speak for the community and yourself in that regard, if you would.
Yeah, so, well, I would say I'll give my answer secondarily, but to a certain extent, my answer will also be typical of the community. I don't think what I will say is unrepresentative. I think there would be a lot of people that would also sort of fall in that sentiment, which I'll get to in a moment. But again, I think of people like Emergent Reasons or Cheap Lightning, some of these guys I've had on my show quite a lot who were there at that time and heavily involved and so forth. They would share some similar opinions to what I was going to say, but to a certain extent, they did switch. Is the other answer? Like, you've got to remember that it's not a coordinated thing. In hindsight, it's like, oh, why didn't everyone in quotation marks do this or that? but it's decentralized. That was the whole point. And especially back then, now over time, you've had much more time for the community networks to form and stuff like that. And also, not only is the community bigger and had more time to grow together, both on the BCH and BTC side, but it's also much less risky. Like at that time, plenty of people were like, think about Moon Settler, right, that we've had on the show, and he was talking about how he got in 2011, and then he only sort of popped up to start making a public presence in like 2017 when he felt, or I think it was when he was like, damn, I need to like get involved here. And like the same with me, I did these Reddit posts and then I went off the radar for a while, and then I only started doing the podcast in 2021, right? So a lot of people like Vitalik or like Roger, who were out there early, like with their face and all their stuff, like everybody's in a different situation, especially geopolitically around the world. And obviously being early in Bitcoin, a lot of people would be, more of the paranoid types, right? But it was insanely risky to be publicly advocating for Bitcoin or crypto at that time. So it's not like everybody all kind of knew each other and could quickly get to the bottom of like what was truth and what was fiction. The censorship and so forth changed the narrative like massively there. So in this environment, when you're sort of at war, the confusion and chaos created meant that a lot of people did just defect. But the answer is that they mostly went to Ethereum, right? They didn't go to Litecoin or to Dash or anything like that, because Ethereum was where the action was. Like that was where the momentum was. And I don't think a lot of like, part of the problem was that Ethereum is not a UTXO chain, so it was not likely to be a viable alternative, which is why I personally, wasn't that interested in Ethereum. But a lot of people, I guess, didn't really know the difference, or they thought, yeah, whatever, we'll figure out some solutions. So ETH was the biggest benefactor of the block size war, and it's because of a lot of sort of big blockers found their way in there. Because especially at that time, the Ethereum community and Vitalik and all that were saying like, oh no, we'll just raise the blocks, like we'll raise the block size, don't worry, it's fine. And of course many years later, like that, and they did do that to a certain extent, but then many years later, things have reversed, where I actually had, what's his name, David, whatever his name is, David, the guy from Trustless State, the guy from Bankless. I had an argument with him on Twitter a little while ago where he tried to tell me that that Ethereum was like never the big blockers, and I was like, no, they were the big blockers. That was the original premise. And he was like, no, but our blocks are smaller than Bitcoin. And I'm like, yeah, but if you do the maths, because there's more of them per unit time, it's actually much more on chain. And like, he'd never thought about anything like this. Anyway, so I wrecked him in this thread, and then he, never, well, then I wrecked him in a later thread. At some point I'll do a compilation. He's the next one after Eric. Well, he's going to be the next one to get it. But anyway, he, the whole point was the big blockers, yeah, a lot of them found their way into Ethereum because that was where the traction was, and that's where the momentum was, and that's where things were not chaotic. Some people wanted to stay and fight, and some people are that less contrarian, combative type of personality, and they're just like, well, if it's not working here, we'll just go where it's rainbows and unicorns and momentum is growing. So if you look into it, yeah, a lot of those people who were influential in the early ETH scene were interested in Bitcoin Cash, and there's quite a few Bitcoin Cashes that have a fat stack of ETH because they were in early. I won't name any names, but I'm definitely aware of at least a few. So that's, I think, the first answer is, yeah, that kind of did happen, but people mostly went to ETH. Of course, some maybe went to Litecoin, probably very, very few. Or to Dash, very, very few. Like Joel Valenzuela is one example of that, but relatively few. My answer is that I think people understood, and I definitely understood, that it was Bitcoin or nothing. Like, you got to appreciate that Bitcoin maximalism such as, and I have an FAQ on my site about Bitcoin maximalism to this point, and we've talked about it on this show, is that at that time maximalism was a non-toxic thing, and it became these toxic assholes on the BTC side, but it wasn't always like that. And if the big blockers had won, it wouldn't have been like that, right? The big blocker mentality was more inclusive, big tent, keep everyone in the same boat, let's all win as a network kind of thing. And I think a lot of the people who went with BCH, myself included, put a very, very, very high premium on the fact that Litecoin is not a substitute. There's a magic to Bitcoin that you can't replace, like the mythical sort of founding of Satoshi Nakamoto being anonymous and making this incredible creation for the world and then walking away from it and leaving his stack. Like, that's something that nobody can ever dispute or take away, essentially, except for Satoshi himself, who will never do that, right? So that, if you think in the context of getting something that 8 billion people will agree to be a money, it needs to be neutral enough that could feasibly happen. And I can't see that happening with Litecoin or with Ethereum. Ethereum can't for technical reasons, but Litecoin, like, even just the fact that Charlie Lee is a known guy, right? Some people can blame or FUD that, and then the Litecoiner people will say, well, it doesn't matter because he dumped his bag, and they'll have all these excuses. But the fact that you need to even explain that already is like, it's already killed the idea right there, right? So I still, obviously to this day, I believe it's BCH or nothing, pretty much. Like, we've just got that one shot. And when you talk about like the Bitcoin brand and stuff like that, like, it still just is Bitcoin, and everybody would say, okay, Bitcoin Cash is such an anti-brand and blah 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 blah, like, it's a lost brand. And no, it's the opposite. Bitcoin Cash, like, I can talk to people about Bitcoin Cash, and loads of people, they've heard about Bitcoin, but they don't know Bitcoin Cash. So they're already starting off like, okay, this is interesting. And then I can explain a little bit and they kind of get it. If I'm telling them about Litecoin, they're thinking, what is this? Like, Litecoin is not Bitcoin, but Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin. And I can explain and advocate that. And like I've talked about on the show, to me, it's religious almost, with Bitcoin. So I think for all of those reasons, the hardcore, like the less hardcore sort of big blockers and stuff kind of migrated to ETH out of convenience, and the hardcore idealists were like, it's Bitcoin or nothing. And so between those two camps, just Litecoin or Dash or whatever, nah. Yeah. I when I'm talking to somebody about Bitcoin for the first time, I try to implore upon them the beauty, elegance, and importance that Bitcoin has no issuer at its core. Between the proof of work concept and the fact that Satoshi Nakamoto is anonymous and hopefully always will be, it has no issuer, and that is truly unique at the end of the day. So tagging on to that, I appreciate your lengthy response. You could have just said the network effect, Jeremy. It's okay, but it's the opposite. It had a lower network effect, but yeah, sort of, maybe, yeah. Yeah. Well,
it's again that brand name, if you will, and recognition, especially when introducing it to new people, saying, okay, forget about Bitcoin. Here's Litecoin, and now let me go into all of the nuances here. I mean, they're just going to glaze over and say, this is ridiculous. Most of them think it's ridiculous on its face as it is because they don't understand it. And then when you bring in all of these other crazy chains and side coins and what have you, I mean, every day, there's something. But yeah, great response. Appreciate that. Pigtailing on that, you said Bitcoin Cash, you're all or nothing, which I would agree with. Do you take that as even further to say one coin to rule them all, or do you see a world where Bitcoin Cash works as money and then things like Ethereum, eGold, Dash, DOT can work in the smart contract space, or do you think these are concepts and technologies and ideas that can also be built on the Bitcoin Cash in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem?
Well, it's all going to be Bitcoin Cash in the end, basically. So I'm not saying that there's going to be no other coins, because other coins will and always, will exist and so forth. But I see it as more likely that essentially in the end, we'll go back to what was the early days of Bitcoin, which is that Bitcoin was 99.5% or more of the total crypto market cap, and there was hundreds of other coins, but they were so small and nobody was really involved in them, and everybody who was involved in those also was big in Bitcoin, like just without a doubt. And I just see it going kind of back to that, like with cash tokens and with whatever other VM limit tweaks or anything else that we need to do. BCH will be able to do anything that any other chain can conceivably do. And if any sudden mega innovation comes out of somewhere, well, the BCH community will find a way to get the benefit of it. That's the whole point of it being BCH rather than BTC, who are just like burying their head in the sand and then accidentally ending up with ordinals. Like, that's never gonna be a winning strategy. But again, BCH is just that pure original Bitcoin concept of anything that proves itself good enough in the market of ideas, let's find a way to mix it into our formula. And that's exactly what's happened with cash tokens in a unique industry-leading way. So DeFi and everything, that will all be on BCH. And once you get, like, people don't really understand that by the time we have half of the global population using Bitcoin Cash, what would be the reason to use anything else? Like, the network of, it's the same as like HTTP, once it's just embedded in absolute, or the way English is almost getting around the world, it's like, it's just no comparison. There will always be other languages than in English, but maybe in 30 years time, it'll just be everybody will speak English. Some people will speak a second language, but just everybody will speak English, and it's going to be the same. Everybody's just going to use Bitcoin Cash, and there'll still be commodity trade in gold or in oil or different things, but it will be like most of the world's economy for sure. Yeah.
So from a monetary and medium of exchange, I'm 100% with you. My question is, does Bitcoin Cash have the framework for other technology, smart contracts, and use cases to be built on top of it? I think the answer is yes. But I guess in short, what limitations do you see in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem where other tech might not be able to integrate with it, and some of these other chains, blockchain technologies would be better suited? Something like VET or DOT comes to mind. But again, I'm not a developer, and that's probably very apparent just by my question. So,
well, no, I think it's a good question. Like, there's not infinite flexibility, right? Like, BCH and Bitcoin has made some certain trade-offs. So in terms of like cash tokens gets us almost all the way there. Like, I think really just it's cannot be overstated how important cash tokens is and how that's just changed the game and set us up to be the global reserve currency, like, in such a massive way.
You mean it wasn't just created for gurus?
No, but they've been doing a killer job. SLP maybe was, but cash tokens is just the next level. Like, Jason Drysdale is honestly a genius. He will be in the history books once we're global reserve currency for sure, an absolute rock star of everything. But as far as like some things we could not change. So for instance, if it was suddenly discovered that proof of stake was by far better than proof of work, and I don't agree with that, but if in some world somehow things changed and that proved to be true, BCH community would be in a tough spot, right? Like, we've kind of got all our bets, all our money on like proof of work, which I think is good. I'm very happy that that's the case, but there's always a world where something else changes, or if some, you can never count out some new technology got invented, probably not quantum computing, but something in that kind of vein could pop up that just obsoleted all the old coins, and then only new ones developed post that paradigm had any chance. Or like, maybe if, I don't know, somehow space progress accelerated and turned out we were colonizing other planets far faster than we wanted, and there had to be some adjustment to do interplanetary. Even then, I mean, BCH is just the transfer of information at its core, right? So it's still like not really, you can still adapt it to that scenario, but that would be the kind of thing. Something like if proof of stake suddenly became absolutely required, or if there was critical flaws found in one of the hashing algorithms like SHA-256 or in ECDSA, that kind of thing, like it might not be recoverable just if that all fell apart.
So pigtailing off of that, proof of work, proof of stake, can you speak to federated Byzantine agreements or federated Byzantine consensus as a security protocol? Any insight there? It's one of the arguments I've heard as being superior. I don't think there's anything superior to proof of work, but that's also coming from my layman's understanding of all of these security concepts. Can you speak to FBA at all?
Yeah, well, do you mean, so for listeners who don't know, one of the classic things that is brought up in talking about Bitcoin is this Byzantine generals problem, which is this computer science problem that was supposedly, unsolvable, or that was unsolved sort of until Bitcoin. And the idea is if you have a bunch of generals who are camped around a city and they need to attack it, if, let's say there's 5 generals, if all 5 of them attack at the same time, they'll win. But if they go in sort of piecemeal one by one, they'll get chopped up. So it's very important that they all trust each other in terms of having a coordinated plan of attack, right? And the idea is that they can send information to each other, but the only way is kind of like through or around the city. So they don't know that they're able to get an authentic, like obviously if they all just had, WhatsApp, they could just send a message like attack at, 8 o'clock and that would be the end of it. But if they have to send scouts that can either be potentially sabotaged by the people in the city or can be faked by the people in the city, how are they able to establish a common agreement in an environment where they can't trust the information that they're getting? And so Bitcoin's solution to that was proof of work, right? Which is that if you do something, if you unfakeably expend energy on your message, then you can build a proof of work chain that eventually there's been so much energy put into this chain that you can trust the message at a certain point, right? You would be able to get over a threshold, like put in a message saying attack at 8 p.m. once you've seen 100 blocks in quotation mark worth of further messages confirming that we're all going to do this. And, because there's no time limit, you would eventually just get to a point where you're like, okay, guys, let's do it. So I'm not really sure what you mean about the federated Byzantine generals. Are you just talking about like proof of stake, or what do you mean by that?
I think Ripple and Stellar work on this protocol compared as an alternative to proof of work and proof of stake, this FBA, Federated Byzantine Agreement. And again, I don't know the nuances there. Was wondering if you did. I was just curious if you had feedback on that. So
yeah, I don't know too much about it. I would need to look into it. I mean, I'm super skeptical, honestly, of anything that is not Bitcoin, right? And the reason is that most people don't really appreciate how good Bitcoin actually is. Like they think, like even with Vitalik inventing Ethereum, it's not like Vitalik is not the next Satoshi. He's not even in the same league, as we can already see with, he's been called out by Iggy, so, he's getting wrecked there. Iggy's not beefing with Satoshi. She can't handle that kind of heat. But in terms of, like the account model and stuff like that, this is just problems that Satoshi had solved from day one. Yeah. That Vitalik, even with the benefit of hindsight, but probably also the disadvantage of being, likely, almost certainly, much younger and less experienced, wasn't able to see. And nobody has really seen, like once BCH gets to a certain size and is rolling, it will really start to dawn on people that Satoshi just had it all right from the start. So in that sense, yeah, Federated Byzantine, like anything that's like, no, we've got a better idea. It's probably not better, firstly. And then secondly, it's probably not so much better that it would justify switching away from the network effect to begin with. So I would need to look into those things, but I think Ripple and Stellar and all that, then that's even before you get into other problems with pre-mines and whatever else. So
in my opinion, they're already eliminated just for that simple fact that they have issues in their pre-mined. But I was actually curious about the consensus protocol that they work on, which is FBA, and just wondered if you had feedback there. But I tend to agree. Proof of work. I mean, it's right there in its name. You gotta show some effort here, expending something, and I think that is a crucial aspect of this technology. All right. Again, just tell me to shut up whenever you want. I can keep going here. So.
I don't know. I'm happy to maybe do 2 more. I don't know how many more you got, but maybe 1 or 2 more.
I got a list here. I'll try to trim it down here. Let's see here. So I listened to. Let's see here. I heard. I'm going to butcher his name. Amaury Sachet. Is that right? eCash, the Datalinks.
Sachet, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I listened to him on the on Vlad's Bitcoin Takeover podcast a couple of months ago, and something stuck. Something hopped out at me in what he said. He said he claimed that you can't grow the block size forever. At some point, you're going to hit another bottleneck. With the current tech, the block size works fine up to about 20 megabytes. Above that, you have to change some things. Any feedback there?
Yeah, well, it was funny because Vlad actually, I know what you're talking about, and I did watch that whole episode. I've said it before on the show. I'm very interested in Amaury, and maybe at some point I'll talk to him. But Vlad like used that as bait, right? He started promoting that quote afterwards to try and get stir up drama and get people to look into his show and obviously watch his content. And Amaury, kind of knew what he was doing and sort of had to correct him in the comments a little bit. But if you go back and watch it, what he says is, Amaury says, look, raising the block size can only kind of get you so far, like maybe about 20 megabytes is the right amount, right? If you just took Bitcoin Core and you just changed the number like up to about 20 megabytes, it would be fine. And then past that point, you'd be a bit stuck. Now, he clarifies on that show, and then he later clarified also on Twitter several times, or at least once, was what he meant was you could get to about 20 megabytes if you didn't do anything else. Like there's a lot else going on. Like you might need to upgrade the P2P networking code. You can have compact blocks, where instead of sending through, like if I'm sending you a block with 1,000 transactions, your mempool already has 800 of those transactions. So I can just send you a list of the 1,000 transactions, and you can check against and see, I've already got 800 of these and I only need to request 200 more. I don't need to re-download the full 1,000, right? So there's these kind of things which are not unknown, like we know that we can do them and so forth, but the BTC community have not started down that road at all. So the point that Amaury was making was, if the BTC community got into big blocks, they'd get to about 20 megabytes and then they'd run into a big problem. What he wasn't saying, but what Vlad tried to misrepresent him to stir drama, was that at 20 megabyte blocks is when you're like suddenly at a huge impasse, which isn't really the case at all. It's just the case that you need to have a community that is planning for and preparing these things. Obviously, you also have like the indexes and the wallets and all the related software, like all this stuff. You can go and listen. Actually, General Protocols have been crushing it, doing some great spaces. You can listen, and they've had one that they just released the other day about scaling, which was also talking about this. So, like, obviously now BCH has 32 megabyte blocks and ABLA, so we're already past this, 20 megabyte limit. But it's 20 megabytes is the limit if you don't do anything else to optimize. Firstly, if hardware doesn't get better, which it does, and secondly, if you don't actually plan to do big blocks and do the appropriate big block infrastructure related stuff. But we are and we will. So there's not really going to be a big issue in that sense.
Moore's law and good development.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Just a couple more here, and I'll let you guys get on with your evening. So one of the things I came across in reading Jonathan Beer's book, talking about the downside of soft forks having technical debt as they soft fork. Since Bitcoin Cash shares the root code of BTC, are we prone or susceptible to that same technical debt that burdens and bogs down BTC?
No, because there was soft forks in Bitcoin history before the BTC and BCH, split, but the BCH is not affected by anything that happened to BTC after it split off, obviously. So that includes SegWit. So that's one giant pile of crap that the community, successfully dodged. And then Taproot and all the mess completely dodged that. And no doubt if or when they get around to mixing some other bullshit into the stew, like that's all completely irrelevant. So BCH not affected by it. Like Bitcoin development was very well handled, all things being considered, as an upstart, open source anarchic project. Like it could have gone off the rails a lot more than it did up until the point of the split. It was relatively well managed, right? So the only thing that was very poorly done, well, there's two things I can think of. One was replaced by fee. I believe that actually got into the code base before the split. But one of the first things they did in BCH was they ripped that out. So we've already fixed that. That's not a problem anymore. And of course, it's the other way around in BTC. It's got worse because then you've had Peter Todd socially engineer it in as a flag into Bitcoin Core. So it's actually getting more embedded in things. And the other one was unchained, unconfirmed transaction chains, which again was talked about on this general protocol space just the other day, where because of replaced by fee and the high fees and the unreliability and screwing up the zero conf, then they needed to add rules that you could only chain, I think it was like 25 transactions one after another. But in BCH, that's just not a problem because all it doesn't, it's all going to get confirmed anyway. So you don't get into these funky games of did the right fee pay the right amount, and child pays for parent as well. I don't think you can do that in BCH, but maybe it's possible. I believe not though. So yeah, anyway, the point is like soft forks is just a poor way of upgrading the network. So it's likely, not guaranteed, but it's likely to introduce technical debt. And the BTC community have just been piling, hack after hack in that regard, whereas the BCH community took out all the bad shit as soon as they had the chance and hasn't introduced any more. So we're fine in that regard.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is more of an observation. Did you have anything to do with that Who Killed Bitcoin 2, the documentary Saving Bitcoin? Did you have any hand in that?
Well, I didn't have any input in it. Luca and the guys made it after they'd done from Who Killed Bitcoin. They asked me to do the voiceover, and I was interested in doing it just like I did for the original one. But that was also sort of in the run up to Bliss, and I was just so busy with organizing everything with Bliss that I didn't get around to it. The voiceovers take ages to do, especially for something like that, where it's like whatever it is, more than an hour. And it's not like I can just sit down with the script and read it all out, because I need to time it roughly to how long the footage actually takes in the first place. So, we need to translate it and then time it out and then try and get the audio consistent enough. And there was just so much to it that I didn't really get around to it. And a couple of people messaged me and said, "Oh man, you didn't do the voiceover for this." Like, I was really hoping that you would have, but I would have liked to, but at the end of the day, like, they just wanted to get it out, and I didn't have time. So
I was disappointed to not hear your voice there. It almost sounded AI on the
I think
audio.
they did use an AI actually for it.
Yeah. One of the best part about that, I always kind of struggled with a good analogy to explain the difference between miners and nodes, and the importance of one over the other, and how one essentially has most of the power. In that referee, player, audience analogy there, I think at about the 12-minute mark in that documentary is so perfect. It makes perfect sense there. As I just wanted to comment on that. All right, last question, guys. I'll let you get on with your day here. So if we accept that Bitcoin BTC has been crippled by what appears to be a small group of individuals, whether they were threatened or coerced or what have you. What is something you can tell the community about Bitcoin Cash, if anything, to assuage concerns that the same thing doesn't happen to Bitcoin Cash? Because if it is the threat that it is, which I truly believe it is, to fiat currency, these guys are not going to roll over and let us scratch their belly. They're going to go down with a fight in some way, shape, or form. What is how can this not unfold in the same way as we've seen Bitcoin BTC be crippled as far as Bitcoin Cash?
Well, you have a few answers. Like the first thing is, yeah, it hasn't been without a fight. You know, this stuff didn't all just like stop after the first split. Then you had the second split with Craig Wright, and who knows, maybe somebody's been involved in, you know, stirring that up, you know, to cause a split. And then again, the same thing with Amaury, you know, maybe he was influenced one way or another to change his ideas about Bitcoin, or maybe he always had the wrong ideas and he just happened to be at that point in prominence, you know. The short, like the simple answer of how do we not end up in the exact same situation is the problem was the block size limit, and now we have ABLA. So bam, that's done. It's now changed the dynamic that in the past, the biggest problem with the block size war was that inertia has a huge advantage, right? The home ground advantage was let's not change anything, but it's just because in a chaotic situation, just clinging on to what's working is going to be the natural shelling point that people converge onto, and that was a large part of how they were able to carry the day. So now the dynamic is reversed in BCH. If you know, the scaling will continue even as everyone argues on in forums. It needs to be faster, it needs to be slower, we need to stop it, whatever. You know, if miners are producing bigger blocks, it will keep growing. So in that sense, we've fixed that vulnerability. But really the answer is that it's just a social defense, right? The problem was that the community believed the propaganda and lies, not all of it, but the ones who didn't believe it then either went into BCH or ETH or quit the industry totally. Like the ones who stayed swallowed the propaganda, and them unwinding that has taken them a long time and still is, and may for, decades to come, basically. So the defense is actually just that the BCH community is highly educated to be aware of this attack, and that's why it's important that hijacking Bitcoin has been huge, and everyone should obviously read that, and obviously all the material we've done on this show, and Who Killed Bitcoin, and all these things, right? These it's like the network effect applies to everything, including the ideas, right? As the BCH community is already sort of immunized against such a propaganda attack from having seen it and having that bad experience, that means that every new person who then joins the community pretty quickly gets told by existing people. It's like an oral tradition, it hands down through the community. So as you're onboarding people to BCH, obviously it doesn't need to be the very first fucking thing that you bring up with them, right? You need to get them interested in it and transacting with it and trying it out and stuff. But as they get more interested and they start to ask questions, well, how is this different to BTC and blah, 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 then, everybody should proactively be explaining the history, explaining what happened, why it needed to rebrand, that we were under a, severe, sabotage attempt and so forth. And then so that then if it ever happens again, or when, more likely, rather than if, the community will handle it appropriately. Of course, it's most important for the people who are most entrenched. The most influential people are also the people who are most aware of and were most proximate to this history. So that's the major part of the defense. But it needs to be that then when those people spot those same patterns and point it out, that everybody goes, yeah, I've heard about this, I know this, no problem. And it's kind of beneficial in the way that we have a split at all, because when people say that there's no way to explain Bitcoin Cash without explaining the sabotage. The fact that it exists at all is proof that, if somebody's not going to come into Bitcoin Cash and be like, oh, you're just making it up about all this sabotage and blah, 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 because it's if that had been the case, there would be no Bitcoin Cash. It just would be Bitcoin,
Yep, you've weathered the storm at the end of the day. Awesome.
All right, we got a couple of quick other things we'll just hit on before we wrap up. We got community comment of the week. This one comes from, what's his name here? Boy Acacia, I don't know. And we had one of these BTC dev guys say, "This is drive chain." Hat tip to Matthew Hirkins on Twitter, and he posted a screenshot of some op codes that he'd, I guess, written up or something that was like showing that if BTC had the BCH opcodes, or with BCH, you can already make a sort of version of drive chains. So this guy was reading this, saw this. This is obviously great news that these guys are now starting to look into BCH and take it seriously. And some of them might be listening to this show. If so, welcome aboard. Don't worry, we're not going to roast you too much if you'll accept you're on the wrong side. And anyway, this guy Boy Acacia said, quote, "Is Bcash technically years ahead of Bitcoin, question mark, end quote." And then the comments was just everybody piling in, like half of Bliss is in this comment section. David Shattuck, Ryan Giffen, Alex, Marius, Callisti, Jonathan Silverblood, Omar are all in there saying yes. Everybody's just saying yes. And so it's just great to see that the BTC side have finally like woken up. Like, wait, these guys haven't just been, I don't know, rotting in the corner like a stupid shitcoiners for the last 6 years. Actually, we've just been shipping upgrades at a pretty consistent pace, and that's all now adding up. Not only is it adding up, but we've now made enough noise about it, made enough progress that they're starting to think, wait, I kind of want that. But yeah, good luck to them with their endeavors in that regard. So I really like this. Anything on that, Steve?
No, it's just highlighting again how, because of the hard fork, you guys got to work. I mean, the entire community, the devs, and they've been working on this since, where BTC has stayed in this stagnant pool of dogmatic narrative that I don't know how you could look, knowing what's happened. You don't have to put on your tinfoil hat. I mean, just look and see at the progress that has come out of the block size war and see which one works better as peer-to-peer electronic cash. It's really that simple at the end of the day. But you can't ask that question without also thinking, well, this team of Bitcoin Core has been compromised in some way, shape, or form. There's a reason why. I love Roger's analogy and hijacking Bitcoin, where they've broken your legs and then they're ready to sell you crutches. It makes perfect sense in that regard. Yes. Use Lightning, use Liquid, so we can collect transaction fees directly instead of it going to miners. This just seems self-evident at the end of the day. That's all I can say. So
it is now, and that's the thing. Like at the time, and for the old timers, who were there and still have a, grudge about all that stuff. Like at the time, we knew that we were right, but there was still that sense of like, they said that their scaling was going to work. We said that ours was going to work. They said they were the real Bitcoin, the P2P cash. We said we were the real Bitcoin, the real P2P cash. And as time goes on, like now we've all been like, vindicated. It's nice to see as time goes on, the evidence just adds up and up and up and up, which is why people are starting to capitulate, and switch sides. Like Eric Waller today, we saw Ray Youssef again was coming out and being like, okay, guys, some people saw this coming in 2017. I didn't, but I get it now. Eventually reality just speaks louder than anything else. So it is great to be in that position. But, you can somewhat forgive people who at that time weren't sure, or they didn't know, maybe they didn't have the right background to understand everything that, to be able to accurately predict how it's turned out. But now you don't need to be able to predict. You can just do any amount of research and see exactly what it was, and then also see that the big blockers correctly predicted exactly how it is on both sides, actually. Yeah, cool. All right,
it's hard being right all the time.
It is. Let me tell you, mate, nothing worse than all the people that I've told to buy Bitcoin and they still won't fucking listen to me. Holy cow. All right. Meme of the week. This one's a bit of a multi-layer one, so I'll try and explain it for the listeners to the audience. Okay, the tweet, the original tweet, is from Jamison Lopp, who we've roasted on this show before for his own failings, but he's out there trying to do his own call outs. So he posted, quote, "BSV is the gift that keeps on giving." And he's got a screenshot which has 2 tweets in it. And they're both from Elon Moist, who is a BSV fan and was the founder of Twitch, which is the social media app with Bitcoin on BSV, right? So Elon Moist said in 27th of July 2020, which Jamison has highlighted, Casa will be bankrupt in a year. So Casa is Jamison Lopp's company for custodying or securing Bitcoin, I guess. I don't know if he custodies it. And then he has a second tweet here, Elon Moist, June 5th, 2024, shutting down Twitch app, heavy AF, not gonna lie, salute. So Jamison's kind of making the point that Elon Moist said my company would be bankrupt in 1 year in 2020, but here we are in 2024. My company is fine, and Twitch is the one that's failed and died. So he's kind of dunking on him a bit. But the meme of the week is that Elon Moist quote tweeted this to reply to give his thoughts, and he said, quote, "The haters said I couldn't do it, and they were correct. Honestly, great call from the haters."
I gotta applaud that.
Everything about this.
Gotta applaud that. At least he had enough grace to admit defeat at the end of the day.
Exactly. Took it like a man, dude. I love it. Like Elon Moist, I'm so much more bullish on him than Jamison Lopp, because Jamison Lopp, you know, as if he doesn't have his own things. If I'm roasting him in his comments with something pretty much equivalent to this, he comes up with copes and excuses and reasons and all of that. And then he's out here dunking on people thinking like, haha, that'll show them. Elon Moist has just got him beaten. Even if Elon's Moist company folded first, he's the bigger man, that's for sure. And he's shown it right here. So, yeah, hats off to you, mate. And tough luck about Twitch. I think that was always a bit of a, doomed to fail. But, come join us on BCH. That's all I'll say. We're here ready for you. Okay. Message to the community, round it out for us. What does the Bitcoin Cash community need to hear?
Oh, from me, I don't know what I can contribute that you couldn't contribute better. But if you're new to this, or you're just sticking your toe in and taking a look, the best way to convince somebody is to have them use it. It's really very simple, and it just works. And I can attest to this myself, having done an entire trip to Europe and back using nothing but Bitcoin Cash. This works as peer-to-peer electronic cash, as stated in the headline of the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper. I don't know how much more clear it can be. It just works. So pick up a wallet, Selene, Zap it, Bitcoin.com, Stack. If you want some privacy with the Cash Fusion that's built into Stack, use it. Even if you're just sending it to your spouse or your sibling or a close friend, and you're sending it back and forth to each other, the power is in that, actually seeing it work, knowing that you're transacting peer-to-peer without any blood-sucking leeches as middleman trying to skim off of your money. So I think that's what I would say. Just give it a shot and see how it works. And then any opportunity you have to encourage merchants to use this, do so, especially if you're in your local community and you're talking to the taco truck guy or some food truck person or a small business, somebody that's power washing your driveway. I had a guy come out and fix dents on my wife's car a few months back. I said, hey, let me pay you in Bitcoin Cash. I didn't get to convert him. He was still really skeptical, but I'm going to go back and work on him. So any opportunity you have to encourage a merchant or somebody offering products or services to accept this, do so. especially if they're a small business and they don't have to go through some kind of corporate bullshit nonsense with point of sale systems. Any small business owner or independent contractor can accept this directly onto their wallet on their phone. So encourage them to do so. Or if nothing else, just ask them, hey, can I pay you in Bitcoin Cash? And I think if nothing else, you'll be surprised by their reply, which is an open door to have a further and deeper conversation about these things. And that's what I found has been most beneficial. My flight over to Ljubljana, I flew from Chattanooga to Charlotte, Charlotte to JFK, JFK to London Gatwick, Gatwick to Ljubljana. It was a hell of a travel day, almost 26 hours with layovers. But my flight from Charlotte to JFK, I was reading Hijacking Bitcoin on the plane, and when we landed, the guy next to me says, Bitcoin. And I've been interested in that. A younger guy, I was kind of surprised that he didn't know more about it due to his age, but we just started talking. Within 10 minutes, I'd used the shareable link on the Bitcoin.com wallet and sent it to him, $5 in Bitcoin Cash, and he saw it work, and it was really neat watching him receive that and kind of the light go off and his eyes light up when he received that $5 I sent to him. And then I had him send me back $2 so he could engage in the transaction himself and see how it worked. I'll probably never talk to the guy again. I sent him a shareable link through my phone via text, so maybe he reaches out to me sometime in the future. But it's little interactions like that that get people thinking and get the conversation started. So my message to the community would be, don't miss out on any opportunities to talk to people about this. I think hard assets and hard currency and an unfuckwithable medium of exchange is absolutely the most important thing from a societal, cultural standpoint that we could be engaging and talking about at the end of the day, because it so drastically affects every aspect of our lives. So proselytize, get out there, talk to people about it, share it, use it, replace it, and watch this snowball continue to grow and roll downhill and pick up speed. So that's what I would say. As far as my socials, Steve Thurmond on Twitter, just my full name, at Steve Thurmond on Twitter. I did start a meetup group for Bitcoin Cash here in Chattanooga. I am the only person in that group as of now. So I just started a few weeks ago. But if you're in the Tennessee or the southern area, Georgia, Kentucky, Carolinas, and you want to join my meetup group here in Chattanooga, I do hope to start utilizing that in some way, shape, or form. So feel free to reach out there. If you're in the traditional finance space, you need help with insurance or any kind of income or retirement planning, I do still live in that world. I'm out of necessity at this point, and hopefully transitioning away from that as time goes on. But yeah, Forward Financial is my my LLC here in Tennessee. You can find me at forwardfi.com. It has all of my contact information. So I guess that's it for me.
Awesome, and we'll have links to that stuff. And like you say, just every little bit counts. Every little time that you just talk to someone, even if you don't convince them, even if they completely are unreceptive to it, which most of the time they're honestly not. Especially if you're wearing some BCH swag or you're going to a BCH event or something like that really makes people think, "Wow, this is serious business." Then that can just be the third time that they heard about Bitcoin, or the fifth time, or the 80th time, and eventually the next person that talks to them, they're going to say, "Look, what is this about? I keep hearing about this everywhere." And that is all just on the back of just everybody making a little bit of noise in their corner of the world. And we don't see that impact directly, but we see then Donald Trump, 50 million crypto holders, keep their hands off your Bitcoins. Like that's what we get out of all that work. So yeah, keep it up. Okay, we've got to give our supporter appreciation. Shout out to all our donators. You're the bomb. Shout out to our patrons, Ricky and HP, and our sponsor, General Protocols. Check out BCH Bull Like I said, for the Flip Starter, we were going to launch that, but then had some tech issues, so we'll take that under advisement. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the show. The start guide, FAQs, and links are at www.bitcoincashpodcast.com. If you're new, check out episode 85 and try Selene Wallet at selene.cash. Final shout-outs for the show. Steve, did you have anyone special you wanted to give a shout out to?
The general for sure.
Yes.
I absolutely would not be on this show or in this space if it weren't for him, and his roommate who introduced me to him. So shout out to both of those guys, and you guys. For what you guys are doing, you are absolutely the juggernaut in this space as far as the dissemination of information and growing this community. So I salute you both. And it was a real pleasure not only being on the show today, but meeting you both in person in Ljubljana. Enjoy the lighter head there, Jet. It looks like you cut off about 10 pounds of hair, so enjoy that. You should have donated it to Jeremy.
I need it, man. I need it. But we could have sold it off, mate. You know, they have companies that do that for like wigs and stuff. You know, you could be rich. You could have made a lot of sats.
So I was looking. I don't know what the regulations are here, but I was looking into donating it, and because I had bleached it like probably 5 or 6 years ago, they wouldn't accept it as a donation. So.
Wow.
All right.
There's a rule and regulation for everything in the fiat world.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Jed, do you have a shout out?
The food that is waiting for me upstairs. It is calling me. I'm so excited for it.
Okay. All right. Well, don't get too much of that fiat food into you then. My shout out goes to any of the listeners who listen to this whole show. You know, some people don't like it that we do longer shows, but I do. So I think the ones who appreciate it, just spread it out over your 2 weeks at the gym and enjoy it, you know, savor it. That's the real deal. All right, we'll let Jet get out of here. He's hungry. See you later, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.